Welcome back, everybody, to part two of the June podcast. It's time to talk trades. It's time to talk reactions. It's time to talk what do our teams actually need to do. I'm joined by my co-host, co-podcaster, co-commissioner Eric. Eric, how you doing tonight?
Doing great, man. Always enjoy talking some baseball. We're in the thick of things, so good time to do it. Again,
I'm gonna tell you what, I had a blast trying to put together some of these trades. I generally have a trade for every team. Let's see, I put together one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10 trades. I might come up with more on the fly as you go here.
now I couldn't imagine you enjoying something like that. Now,
No, no, not at
why
all.
you of all people would enjoy
No.
something like that? I have no idea.
Yeah, and who could imagine? I feel like my offers are kind of down this year. I feel like my bad trade offers are not as frequent, a little bit fewer and far between this year than years past. Which is kind of something we're going to get into. So off the top here, there's a few topics I wanted to discuss before we get into like our team by team. We'll do our power rankings. We'll kind of go through and we'll kind of list some of the trades that we have envisioned for each of our teams, and or for each team. But there's a few topics I want to spend some time talking about off the top, and it's why does it feel like our trading is kind of down this year? And there's a variety of reasons. You might have kind of your reasons on your own, and one of the first reasons is Scott White actually wrote an article about this on CBS Sports. Some of you guys know. I know Jay listens to the FBT pod, and so he knows about Scott White. But one of the things he said, like in his article, was that like people are just more scared than ever to lose the trade. Whereas like nobody wants to be like on the losing end of the Mookie Betts trade right before he breaks his hand and feeling like crap. And like the the risk of losing the trade is worse than the actual benefit of kind of like winning the trade in the long term. And do you kind of have like any thoughts about that? Do you like look back at your trades and just feel some type of way, or do you kind of take the emotion out of it?
Um, man, that's tough because I think that kind of blends into fantasy football, fantasy baseball, those kinds of things like the trade regret and stuff like that. I would say that overall, I do think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the way our league is set up, I think with the reset year, a lot of people are not willing to give up on A's that have struggled.
Hmm.
I think a lot of guys kind of have reset their team. They're not willing to totally plunge in or plunge out in terms of what they want to do. Obviously, we're going to talk about that in a bit with the teams that seem to be full on selling versus the teams competing. But I mean, I think it's just a little tough. Obviously, yeah, you don't want to lose the trade. And, a lot of trades tend to be big pieces. But as you mentioned in the last podcast, baseball's a little different where there's a lot of roster spots where you think a lot more trades can happen. And
Yep.
generally, a lot more trades do happen in our baseball league than football. But I do think there is a lot of not wanting to lose the trade. But I also think sometimes people always try to do the big blockbusters with the big names when sometimes smaller trades can be just as beneficial. And I don't think some people always look smaller scale. Everyone seems to always want to make the big scale, big move.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And especially like for me, where it's like, okay, I'm not gonna make a trade for it's hard for me to make a trade for like small scale outfield, small scale first baseman when it's like I can look on the waiver wire and find that guy like 90% of whatever that guy is. Like if I'm looking, for example, if I'm trying to trade for like a Dalton Varsho or something like that, Andy Pajes is kind of on waiver wire, who is, basically putting up not the stolen base numbers, but kind of like, I guess you could say like 80% of what that is. So I'm not really looking to get rid of assets for smaller pieces when I just have, I have the replacement value on the waiver wire. And I don't know if some people look that way. It kind of just has to be worth my while, but I think there is something to that. Is everybody wants the big splash move, and a lot of people are afraid to just add around the fringes and make kind of the smaller move. But I think that maybe goes to like, well, I don't want to regret this, so that's why I don't want to do it. And
And also, I think there's a big pool, and again, we're going to talk about it in a bit of the teams rated like or in the standings and head to head like 6 through 10. They're so close with each other, and it's one of those things like, are you going to trade? Are those teams going to trade amongst each other? Like at that point, are you helping the other team's weakness while helping? So it's almost like, are you shooting yourself in one foot to help your other? So
yeah.
it becomes really tough. And like you said, if you're a team at the top like you, Bryce, or Chad, who are comfortably sitting at the top of head to head standings, you guys are probably looking for that superstar addition. Why
Hmm.
trade for depth? Why
Yeah.
trade? I mean, why not? Why I'm going to make my team better, right? So I think a lot of those teams that are in like that 5 to 10 range know they can't really trade so much with each other. So they're looking at those bottom four teams to trade with. And maybe those teams are either asking too much or certain cases amongst other things. But I just think it's so close right now that it's like if I trade something here, it makes a weakness here. And if I
Mhm.
trade this here, it makes it so you're what are you really adding? And I think that's where it's tough. And some of these teams, we talked about this on the last podcast, are gonna have to almost not choose, but soon say, I need to really look at what I'm best at in head to head because I'm in the head to head playoffs. Roto, I'm not gonna quite be there.
You say that every year, and it's never something I ever look at. Honestly, like when I'm playing, I'm pretty much always looking at Roto, but that's because it's always been my preferred format. But like with head to head, like I figure if my team's good, I'll win head to head. If my team's bad, I'll lose
Sure.
head to head. And so like I don't really focus on that until like playoffs come around because I feel like it's mostly luck and matchup based. Like, is your team hot? Is your team not hot? Is your matchup hot? Or is your matchup not hot? And, like I feel like that's who wins head to head. So there's like not a whole lot of prep I do for head to head other than just like, well, I'm just trying to make a well-rounded team that'll compete in those categories.
I agree for the most part. Like if you're a top team, you're not really thinking too much of like what categories am I good at because you're good at most of them.
And I'm
Chad,
addressing
Kyle,
those from a roto standpoint, not from a head-to-head standpoint. I'm seeing, looking at the roto standings, figuring out what it was my team week in based on roto.
and if you look at a team like Chris's, so kind of to my example, if you look at a team like Chris's, he's got 11 points in runs, so that's a plus, very much a plus category. He's got 13 in steals. He's got 13 in Ks. He's got 13 in whip. So if you're so for me, like he's got 77 roto points. Sure, things can change, blah blah blah. But if I was looking at it from a pure, all right, how can I be better in a head-to-head perspective? If I know I can double down on those runs, those stolen bait, those 4 to 5 categories that Chris is elite in, then if you can really go there week in, week out and say, hey, I'm going to win four or five of these categories every single week, that might be better than trying to balance your team out in a roto perspective, you
Yeah, it's
know?
something that it would be hard to do right now. You'd really have to commit to that. But we did add, I think, first, second, and third
Yes.
finishes to our head-to-head playoffs now. So it's not just all or nothing anymore. So I mean, yeah, if Chris goes and a month from now he's like, I'm still at 77 roto points, or I'm around there, it's not looking like I'm making up any ground in roto. And instead of trying to go for it in roto, I'm just going to focus on head-to-head where I know all I need to do is win 5.5 categories.
Right.
5.5 categories will get me head-to-head wins every single week. So if I win 3 offensive categories and 3 pitching categories, and that's going to get me all the way through to a ring. That's the league championship is our head-to-head as what we consider the league champ. So Jay is our back-to-back league champ right now, winning the head-to-head. So you don't need to be perfect. So you don't need to be perfect in like you do in Roto in order to take first place in that. So yeah, I think there is some validity to that if you choose to go the head-to-head route, if that's kind of your
Yeah. Double down on the categories you're good at instead of trying to like balance it out.
yeah.
Because the teams you're going to try to balance it out against, you, Chad, Brett, they're just going to wipe the floor, right? Because odds are, but if you can really say, hey, I'm going to be really good at these 3 or 4 categories, then, there might be a path there.
Yeah. Um, you brought it up earlier, but kind of the difference between fantasy football and fantasy baseball, which is like, I feel like when you're doing a fantasy football trade, it's hard not to look at it as if you're not trying to screw the other person over. Because, like, at
Yeah.
the end of the day, it's just fantasy points. You are going to trade away somebody that is going to score 100 fantasy points, and you're trying to acquire somebody that's going to score 150 fantasy points. And, like, it's
More cut and dry. Yeah.
yeah, it's more country. Like there is a very clear winner, a very clear loser. The only exception is like, yeah, sometimes you can do like position trades where you're like acquiring a quarterback and or taking two guys, a guy from your lineup and a guy from your bench to upgrade somebody. But like at the end of the day, you're trying to win the trade because at the end of the day, it's like how much points are these players going to score? Baseball is so different in that case where it's like you can acquire pitching, you can acquire hitting, you can trade away pitching for hitting. You can send away a shortstop, like a team like Dano who's got 4 shortstops, and acquire an outfield where he's weak. A team like Tyler has a bunch of outfielders. Like there's teams where you can look at where like there's a trade that is mutually beneficial for both teams, and that's what we should be going for in any trade, whether it's a baseball or football or fantasy hockey or whatever it is. I mean, that's how we need to approach all of our negotiations: is how is this mutually beneficial for both sides? And a lot of us are gonna be calling shots and say, Kyle, you're a piece of shit. Why would you're so hypocritical with that? But like that's obviously what we're trying to do. Is if you're trying to send keepers or you're trying to send guys that you think will be assets for the other team, like that's obviously what you're trying to do. And whether it's referring to 30-day stats or talking about the what
Yeah.
if, we're talking about the 30-30 season they had in 2018 or whatever it may be, trying to make that team better. But that's obviously what we're trying to do here. And I think sometimes we lose a little sight of that. And maybe some people don't even think about that. Maybe it's just a matter of I'm just going to try and do what I can to make my team better and figure out what I want to do to make that. But it's something I feel like we all need to look back and be like, oh, was I actually trying to make both sides better? Or was I just trying to pull a fast
Well, and I
one?
think that's the thing too, is there's some people in the league that always try to just get a little too much.
Yeah.
They always just try
Well,
to get a
they try and
little
pull a
too
fast one,
much.
or they try, yeah, or they press and they try. Well, actually, I want a little bit more. Or I
Right.
actually want this.
There's always just that little bit more where it's like, man, this was fair, but oh, can I just add that? And then it's like, well, fuck, man. So and
I was
sometimes
in
I think it
I was in negotiations recently where I got a yes twice. I'm like, all right, let's send it over. Oh, I don't know, actually. Well, can just give me another sweetener in it. And that's like, oh, what the
yeah.
hell, dude? Like, I'm just let's go with it here. And I think the good question to always ask is and I think if more people ask this, and I think I've been asked this before, is like, would you do this trade if you were in my shoes? And if you actually be like, most of the time the answer is probably no, because like there's a reason why you're offering the package you are, that you're trying to give up the players you are, or you're trying to acquire the package
Yeah.
the players you are. But I don't know if that would lead to less trading or more trading, to be honest. But yeah, I just feel like overall there's kind of been a little bit more of an apprehension, a little bit of fear. But do you have anything else to add to that before I get to kind of the redundant assets part of it?
Not too much. Like I said, I think last year also was an interesting case because we were heading into a reset year. So there was a lot of C contracts. I think there was a lot of those small mutually beneficial trades happening. But since like a large portion of our rosters are still A guys, B guys, I think people are just a little bit more hesitant to trade that. And I think that's kind of one of the big cases there. So I think that's why our trades are a little bit down compared to last year. I'd be curious to see where our trades rank from 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Because I really do think every year in the league, like next year, there's gonna be a bunch of B's, there's gonna be
Yeah.
some A. Like every year really almost has like a different dynamic, which I like. I mean, I think that makes it interesting. Last year was crazy with all the C's.
Yeah.
There was all these high salary. So I think every year is just different.
Do you think that how do you think the number of sellers that we've had has kind of affected dynamic? Because I feel like it negatively affects the overall scope of our league. And, part of it is like we just have guys that like I don't know if it's I don't know how I want to say this without coming out bad, but I just think the members of our league, like we're busy guys. Like a lot of us are like, well, hey, did you take a look at that? Oh no, I'll get to it this weekend, or like, that's kind of hard to reach sometimes, or just like that we have other stuff going on. So I think that's like also part of it. But I forget what. Oh man, I lost my train of thought of what else I was
This
gonna say. What's that?
I was going to say at the same time though, I think the way our league is set up is beautiful because we do have weekly lineup locks. So even if it
Yeah.
does take a dude 4 or 5 days to get back to you, hopefully they can get back to you by the end of the week if there's a trade offer there. I know it doesn't always happen, but I don't really see a lack of like necessarily like attention to the league by any means. I'm still having as much fun as ever and paying attention
Yeah.
to it as much as ever. But
I certainly am. I think the sellers, that's what I was going to say is like we've had the last 2, 3 years. I feel like we've had more sellers than we've ever had, where it's just like, man, we get guys like we're not even in a June yet. We have 3, 4 guys that are like, oh, I'm selling this year. And I don't know if that's like good or bad because it creates this weird kind of buyer's market. That kind of hurts the sellers. I mean, like, I don't know if it's hurt the value of some of the returns on guys when it's just like, well, I don't really need to go get Luis Robert when I can go get the player X from this team, or I don't really know to go get
yeah.
this here. And credit to you, it didn't stop you from striking the deal with Justin, striking while the iron was hot and getting some good value there. But it seems like every year it's like, man, we got 4 or 5 sellers already.
No.
And do you think that's kind of had an effect on the overall market value of players?
if
And
if if anything, I think it's made the trade market better because I think that
so,
those are where the trades have been happening. I mean,
yeah.
really, those are where the trades have been happening, or teams that are kind of saying I'm out of it.
Yeah.
Peter, Justin. I mean, where are the trades between the teams that are competing?
Yeah,
They're not there because again, who wants to make Kyle better? Who wants to make Chad better?
I feel that the worst. I'm not going to go on and on about that, but I feel like
But
nobody wants to trade with me because they don't want to. They're afraid of making me better.
But who wants to? I mean, does Chris really want to trade with Jay when they're neck and neck in the head-to-head playoff race? Like, I'm going to make you bet.
You
Like,
should, because there's plenty of time to leapfrog
well,
other
no, and,
people
and
and
I
make
get
each
that. I
other
get that. But
better.
I think
Yeah,
that rides on your point of the hesitancy of like if Chris really severely loses a trade against Jay and they're fighting literally neck and neck in a head-to-head playoff race right now. So and that's what I'm saying. I think there's some teams that are so close to each other that there is a little bit of trade fear of not wanting to lose significantly in that trade. But I mean, we're not seeing if anything to your initial question, I love the fact that we have sellers in June or July because I think there's a few of us, whether it happens or not, there's like a few of us waiting for that bomb to drop of Garrett Cole or Zach Wheeler being traded from Peter. And
Yeah.
who pulls that off? Who's able to? Is it Chad? Is it you? Is it Joe? And the fact that we have that in June, like what is it going to take for that? So
Yeah.
I think the fact that it almost mimics the real baseball season. If we had 6 or 7 sellers, Kyle, I'd be worried. But I
Yeah.
think every year we've had 2 or 3 around June or July, and I don't really think that that's bad. I feel like if anything, that's a safe, good amount because if we're in June or July, a month, 6 weeks before the playoffs start, I mean, a lot of teams know if they're going to make it or not. Peter
Yeah.
knows, Phil knows, Dexter, they're not making it. So
I
I
don't
think
know if Phil knows.
well, we got to get him to know. But I think the fact that we're in mid-June and we only have 3 sellers 6 weeks away from the head-to-head playoffs, I don't think that that's actually that bad.
Yeah, yeah, I guess so. So you'd kind of touched on this a little bit. I think you kind of tiptoed around it. You didn't want to dive in because you know it's kind of a topic in and of itself, but it's the redundant assets of what people have. And there's been years past where it's like, and Krim felt this when he was kind of going for the Mookie Betts trade for a week or two, and I've felt this when I was trying to trade Mookie Betts, and we've all kind of felt this when we were like, we need more peace. I feel like, Jay's feeling this a little bit, and Dana's feeling this a little bit where there's been years in the past where if you have a stud that you're looking to get, you're getting 2 to 3 quality pieces back off of somebody's bench. Where if you were flipping a Mookie Betts, just throwing random numbers out there, you could get a decent outfielder, you can get a Max Muncy, and you can get a solid pitcher all in one deal for Mookie Betts because teams had those kind of players to give up. But I don't feel like that's the case anymore. And I don't know if it's I don't know if it's because we're a 14 team league that it's the case, but I feel like overall the number of impactful hitters is down, is shorter. It's a thinner player pool than it's ever been of quality hitters. And the pitching feels better than it's ever been. But I don't know who has excess pitching. I mean, there's guys that have some quality pitcher and might have like 6, 7 decent pitchers, but we're talking guys that aren't like super valuable or like have like long track records of being solid. So like if you're looking up and down teams, who has like excess hitting? Like I thought I had excess hitting because I had Anthony Rizzo on my bench. Meanwhile, he hasn't done jack squat. Like and that was like it. That was like I can look at my bench and be like, none of my bench players are trade assets. None of my bench pitching is really much of a trade asset. Like I don't know. Do you feel that way with teams? Is that part of the reason why too? Is because it's hard to even do a 2 for 1 or 3 for 1 right now because nobody has the 2 or the 3.
Right. And I mean, we roster 26 guys. I mean, when you think about it, we roster a lot of guys. And when we're a 14 team league, when you
Yeah.
think there's 30 teams in real baseball rostering 26 guys, we make up almost half the MLB. I mean, with our guys. So, I mean, when you think about it,
I
the
mean,
waiver
that
wire is going to,
364 players is what that is, plus IR players. If everybody's
right.
got 3 or 4 IR players, that adds another 40 guys,
And this was my kind of point to like
400
earlier in the
players.
season when I said it's hard to find stuff on the waiver wire. In April and May, when it's early in the season, you just kind of take a shot on a guy that pans out. That's different than what I'm seeing now. When in June and July, like that waiver wire is dry. It's hard to find guys. It's hard to find. So I just think there's a lot more parity in terms of the rosters than ever before. And I think you're right because of the size of our league, the size of our rosters. No, nobody's just going to sit there with 3 or 4 extra hitters or out. I mean, everyone needs outfielders right now. That's why I was very happy to be able to pull that deal off with Justin last
Yeah.
week because I feel like everybody needs an outfielder or two.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the weird thing. And then I was trying to like put together trades and I was like, there's teams that need pitching like Bryce, and we'll get into Bryce's team a little bit more, but just to give an example, if I click on Bryce's team here, like Bryce is a team that is first in the league in offense. He has the best offense in the league right now. And I'm like, well, he could use another like pretty solid pitcher. Like he has some okay, well, I guess doesn't really much pitching depth. Because he got a few closes here and there. I mean, he's got Lance Lynn on his bench and stuff like that, but he could use another solid, starting pitcher, maybe instead of Bailey
Yep.
Ober, instead of somebody in here. But Fairbanks and Diaz are his closers, I guess. And he needs to make up some pitching. So I'm like, okay, well, if you were to try and go after like Zach Wheeler or Garrett Cole are here, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess you got Shane Baz and some pieces. I mean, he could be dangerous there, but I'm trying to like look and be like, well,
I got a
who
deal for
who's
him
who's
when
like
we
the
get to
other
it.
yeah, but I was like, who's the other who's the team that has like excess pitching? Who's the team that has like 7 really good starting pitchers? that like can afford to move. And I was like having a hard time finding them. And I mean, Chad
Yeah.
had some depth. Chad got rid of two, I guess, but I'm like not in love with Chad's pitching depth right now either. And I think it might cost him down the line. And so like I think Chad should add another pitcher, even though he just traded two of them. So
Well, and I
it's
think that's
kind
the
of a
tough
weird
thing too
time.
is like you, Chad, and Bryce. You guys are clearly like the top three teams right now in terms of head to head, in terms of roto right now. There's also a bit of it that's like, is there a little bit of trade scare from the top three teams because it's like we've been so good, why not just write it out and I got one of the best teams in the league. Why do I have to feel like I need to make a trade? Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Because I
Yep.
mean, if your team is that well balanced, Bryce's team, yeah, it
And
could use some pitching,
that's
but
the boat I'm in right now is like, yeah, I feel like I hold kind of some of the cards here because I feel like some of my future assets are pretty solid when it comes to Robbie Ray, Shane McClanahan, Brandon Woodruff, Jacob DeGrom,
yeah,
Carter
I
Crawford.
got
Like
some for you too. I got some made up
yeah,
trades for you.
some of those players I feel like are some of the best assets to be acquired. But I'm also sitting here like in second place, being like, I don't feel desperate to make a move. Like, and especially like when I'm getting quality, like I need outfield, obviously, but like I'm getting quality contributions from Andrew Vaughn and Andy Pajes and some of those guys, and I'm like not really in a huge rush right now, so I'm just kind of hanging in there until I feel a little bit
Yeah,
more desperate, I guess. I don't know. Or I just I'm at point where like I'm kind of happy just taking second place this year and then just being elite the next 2 years with all the pitching that I'm gonna have.
yeah, all the pitching that hasn't pitched in 2 years. Yeah,
Yeah, well, I don't need him to pitch. My pitching's been fine this year. I don't need him to pitch this year, but then next year it'll be fine.
yeah, it'll work
Um,
out great.
yeah, and that's the one thing it's tough to build around. It's tough to build around pitching because
It
it can
is,
be
yeah.
so fickle. So there's one last thing that I want to mention, which is hesitancy for or maybe a reluctance to trade, kind of leading to why there hasn't been as many trades. And it's black and white trading. And I don't know if you know what I mean by when I say black and white trading, but let me give you an example when we when we're trying to build our trades, I don't know when you were trying to build some of your trades, it's like who is a buyer, who is a seller. The sellers only need to can only acquire A and B contracts. The sellers are only giving up C contracts, but that doesn't necessarily need to be the case. And it's tougher to build those trades with like mid-level teams, just swapping C contracts or giving up A contracts or giving up B contracts. But like, there's no reason why you can't, as a rebuilding team, give up an A contract to acquire a better asset. And there's no reason why, if you're a rebuilding team, you can't also acquire a C contract and flip them. And I feel like sometimes we forget that, where it's just like if you were to offer like a C contract in a deal that you had like maybe like an excess player and just reflip them like an injured player or something like that, and then just reflip that asset. Like if I was a rebuilding team, I'd be acquiring injured players and then waiting for them to get healthy. Like I'd go and get Mike Trout, and then in a month when he's healthy, then flip them for increased value. And then like that's kind of how things I would look to do. And we don't always think to do those kind of things. But also the example that I kind of wrote in the doc that we had is like, would I trade Shane McClanahan for Luis Robert? No, I would not. I would not do that trade straight up. But you know what I might consider is if you gave me Luis Robert and Sandy Alcantara. But you don't, when I'm looking at Dex's team, I'm not looking to acquire Sandy Alcantara. It's like he's not trading him, just like Justin's not looking to trade Christopher Morel. But Christopher Morel is an outfield eligible player. And maybe if I just look to like dial it back a little bit, and if I give up a Brandon Woodruff to Justin, and Justin doesn't have pieces and he doesn't have C contracts anymore that I'm going to give up Brandon Woodruff for. But maybe if I just say like, well, hey, how about actually Christopher Morel? Yeah, he'd be a keeper for you next year, but here's a better keeper in front of you. And then you give me Morel and a piece. Like those are things that I feel like I personally I don't think about enough. I did a better job of that before. But like any deals that involve that, do you kind of feel that way? And when you were building your trade offers, when you were swapping assets, did you stick to strict rules of acquiring A players one way, C players the other, or how'd you kind of go about that?
I would say that's kind of what I was hitting on earlier a little bit. I think some teams are looking at it from like you said, kind of a pure black and white perspective. Like I need to get this to get this to get better with that. And
Yeah.
instead of like you said, well, I kind of said it earlier. Why aren't a couple contending teams maybe trading a C for a C and saying, "Hey, I have a deficiency here. You have a deficiency here. Let's help each other out." It's not really happening too much. I would say with the recent trades I made, it was very much in the perspective of they're selling, I'm buying, so they need keepers back. So I
Yeah.
do think it still took that kind of route, which makes sense based on the teams that were involved. and I do think that is generally the consensus. But I do know what you mean though, because I do think that happens. And especially in a redraft year where there's a lot of A contracts. Like for example, Phil, I got like I said when we go over trades later, why not give someone Austin Riley? You're not going to get the value you want for Austin Riley. He's not a $40 keeper right now.
Yeah.
Why not send him? I don't know, to a team like Chad, or a team contending at the top, a team like Jay or Chris. Send Austin Riley there, and maybe they send you a different keeper back or something along those lines. But
Yeah.
no one wants to make those moves.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's tough to because yeah, it's and like when I'm looking, there's a clear tier here. We have as we're gonna go through our power rankings, there's like a tier of four, and it's kind of like our guys that we kind of know are already rebuilding, which are Peter, Dex, Justin, and Phil has not announced that yet. He just doesn't realize it. So I don't know if he's gonna maybe pull off a miracle, but I mean he just made a trade for Mookie Betts and he got hurt the same day. So I don't know. I think he's kind of starting to realize he's head in the water. If not, he probably needs to realize that soon. But like for those kind of players, like when I'm looking at those rosters, I'm basically ignoring the keepers. Maybe I shouldn't be. Maybe I should, look if I'm going to give up with some higher level keepers, maybe in order to even some of those out, maybe we need to look at some of those. And there's no reason why Dex can't make a trade with Justin and Peter can't make a trade with Phil either. Like there's things that I didn't really look into at all, but like there's also if they're looking at next year and the needs that their team's going to need for next year, it's kind of there's no reason why we shouldn't think that way.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, we're gonna get into the trades and stuff too, for sure. And you're right. Even when I made up these trades, I didn't really look at like Peter and Phil making a trade, or Dex and Peter making a trade. I think that would be harder to do, but like you said, it's not impossible.
All right, so perfect transition into this, where if we're talking like building team trade with building team trade, if you're looking at these teams and you're trying to give a blueprint for how these teams should rebuild, what are you trying to do right now if you are Peter, Dex, Justin, or Phil? What are you trying to do now? What are the trades you're trying to make, and like what does a rebuild actually look like? Because there's no cookie cutter way to necessarily do it, but to me, I just be in asset collection mode of just some people might try and acquire as many assets as they can. And that's what some people do. Like I'm just going to have 26 A and B contracts. We saw that out of Jordan last year. He had pretty much everybody on his team was a or B contract in his rebuild. But I think in another way, a lot of teams might look to say, like, actually, I want the quality over quantity. So like when you're kind of looking at these deals, and if you were rebuilding, you haven't really done a rebuild yet. You've kind of been hung around every year, but what do you think that should look like? What would be your game plan?
That's what's tough for a rebuilding team, because here's the first thing that's going to happen is no contending team. It's going to be very hard to pry anything that is helping their team compete right now. I mean, it's just going to be tough. You're
Yeah.
not going to get the top star players from the teams that are obviously competing, because they're helping them. So
Wait,
really,
so
if I'm
you're not trading Ellie De La Cruz to Peter?
no, I mean, the thing is, there's been conversations of that, believe it or
Yeah.
not. I mean, there
Yeah.
has, because I'm open for anything, but I mean,
Yeah.
yes, in that general statement, yes, that is not going to happen unless I get blown away.
Yeah.
But I am looking for cheap contracts, and I'm looking to get as many keepers as possible, because I think what we've seen at least a little bit in this league, and I'd have to look back on the data. Not that I mean that could be a lot to look back on, but it seems like the teams that go in with 11 or 12 keepers do better than the teams that go in with 5 or 6.
Hmm.
It just seems to be like, if you have 11 or 12 guys that you can say, hey, here's my 10 or 11, 12 guys, I'm going to go in there and get, however many. It seems like the more players you actually have as keepers, the better teams do. If you're going into next year with 4 or 5 guys, you're in trouble already. So if you're Phil's team, if you're Dexter's team, and you're looking at, I got 4 or 5 keepers, that's it, start trading.
Yeah, I think there's something to that where it's like obviously you want to maximize your how much you can spend on other players in the draft. So for example, if you keep 6 players and you have $280 to spend, then or you keep 6 players for $20 and you have $280 to spend on the other. What do we have? 26. How many do we draft?
26, yeah.
Yeah, 26. So then you have 20 players, $280 for 20 players, and that's $14 a piece. Whereas if you were to have 12 keepers and for $250 or $260, then like your dollars per player goes up a lot more. Then you have 17, 18, 19, $20 per player more. And you experienced that was it going into this year or going into last year where you had 12 keepers? You had, I think, the most dollar per
Yes.
player that was going into this year, right?
Yep.
You had the most dollar per player of anybody where that was kind of your goal. And I think there's something to that where some people might look at it as quantity versus quality because if you take quantity over quality, you can replenish the star power, you can replenish the quality in the draft. So let's say you keep like a bunch of cheaper assets, well, then you can just go get Ronald Acuna and Fernando Tatis next year when they're available, or Garrett Cole if he gets thrown back, and those the top players that'll be available for next year. When it comes to those players that are C players now, or the players like Austin Riley who probably won't be kept, then you could just use that value to bid on those players. Whereas I look at it from a different standpoint where it's like to me it's all about value. I look at what would you reasonably pay for a player versus what do you have them for? And I want to maximize all of those. So like with some deals, I like there's some guys that'll be kept for $1, $2, $3, $4, $5. Where I'm like, why are you even keeping them? Like those guys are end of the draft players anyway. And the same thing goes with players. I'm like, I've had conversations with people like, why would you acquire that? Why would you keep that? And it's like star level players, like we'll talk about soon, Trey Turner. Like, why would I keep Trey Turner for $37? He shouldn't be a keeper. That's not should be somebody that you acquire because he was drafted for $37 this year. So he was a 37. That's what we valued him as a league, and he's played poorly. So
No, he
why?
has not played poorly.
Yes, he has.
No, he has not.
Well, whatever. But players like that, who
We'll get into that trade later.
underperformed. But like, I don't think there's ever a reason to hang on to a guy at value. And that's kind of my argument with like Acuna or Mookie Betts or those kind of type players where it's like, why would I keep Mookie Betts for $55 when I could just throw him back and then get Mookie Betts back for $55?
It depends what year, because this exact conversation was had about Gunnar Henderson in the offseason.
Correct. And he's outplayed his contract.
Outplayed crazily. And then in the same breath, Corbin Carroll was a sure dynamite, no doubt about it, keeper. And he's been horrible.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's tough because
that's more performance based too. I mean, going into the year, wait, hang on, that's not the team that he's on. Going into the year, Gunnar Henderson, he is what, a 30? How much is he?
I think he's 27, so he'll be 32 next year. But I remember Chad going in the chat when I traded. It was the Morel for Henderson trade, and he's like, "That's a really interesting one. I feel like you could get Henderson for that in the draft again." And then, I mean, everyone would love to have Henderson at that price right now. I mean, that's an absolute bargain.
Yeah, well, yeah, based on his performance this year. But going into this year, he probably in this draft, what do we see? Like a guy who would be like similar to him would be like Ozzy Albies, right?
A guy that would be what, like comparable in price?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Ozzy Albies went for 29. And that's probably about the range of what the production we expected from Gunnar Henderson. So if Gunnar Henderson was in the draft this year, he probably would have went for about $30.
Yeah, I agree.
But he obviously overproduced that. He's playing at MVP level. I didn't see that coming. That's why I was kind of critical. But like that's kind of the things that I was saying, where like, why would you keep him if you could just draft him for that kind of value? And that's kind of an interesting thing with that. And it's the same thing with like Garrett Cole. And I was talking to somebody in this league that was like, oh, like maybe I'll keep trade Garrett Cole and keep him next year. It's like, what? Why would you keep Garrett Cole for the price that he is now that he's starting to get up there in age and battle injuries? And it's
this is the most excited I've been, Kyle, in terms of I'm so curious on who's going to be kept. Because I think there's different mindsets in the league on that. I think there's a lot of people saying, "Man, we overpaid for so many players this year." I think they're all getting thrown back in, and I think there's some people going, "I think really they're being paid about what you'd expect, and I don't have any superstars to begin with, so maybe I'm just going to keep some of my guys." Because like Phil, for example, like Mookie's had a fine season. I'm not paying $51 for what his production is. I mean, I'm not. He'd have to hit 40 bombs to do that. And so I totally I'm in agreement with you in terms of that. But I'm really curious for certain teams as to do they keep some of these $30, $40 guys that we might think are a little. I think we're just assuming, oh, they're going to get thrown back in. They're going to get thrown back in. I don't necessarily think that's the case. But I mean,
think it's kind of a domino effect.
Yeah.
So because I think like if everybody hangs on to their stars. Then, like, let's say Krim, who's in this chat room right now, or whoever ends up, with this player. But you might look at a guy like Freddie Freeman. Freddie Freeman I think he's got him for like 41 or something like
40.
That. If everybody gets kept, if Mookie Betts gets kept and everybody gets kept, then Krim might be like, well, maybe I just need to hang on to Freddie Freeman. He's got him for 47, which is
exactly.
He's like, well, if I know that Fernando Tatis and Acuna are the only players that are going to be available, then I like those Acuna might go for 60 again next year if everybody's got money to spend and he's
Yep.
the only guy. Then the same way that Michael Harris went for 42 last year. So yeah, I mean, these guys and Michael Harris was not worth 42. He never was. And as much as I was trying to put down Michael Harris for his production, I was the one that paid 42 for him last year. So like yeah, if they're the only guys there, then maybe that kind of does play a big
Right.
role in what are the prices end up being. But yeah, it can kind of
I mean,
be
I don't know what people do. Obviously, it totally depends on the player. Like Austin Riley's not being kept at $40 right now. Is
no.
Jose Ramirez, based on what he's doing, being kept at 46? I mean, I
Yeah,
don't. I
I don't
mean,
know.
I don't
It might
know.
add up your financial, or you're going to trade him to somebody who would keep him for 46 because there's
Right.
probably people that want star power. Like I know Justin told me like he wants star power. That's why he did the trade Turner deals because he views him as a star. He wants star power. Maybe Justin, instead of trying to chase Fernando Tatis in the draft, he's just like, well, just yeah, let me lock in J-Ram for $46 and I'm good with that. Instead of trying to duke it out and get in a bidding war with everybody else, and then maybe you can get a cheaper asset from Justin or a smaller asset there.
Right.
Or you could just send him to Justin for free as sabotage, knowing that
I already
you,
got him from Justin, so I'm not sending him back. I'm not sending him.
so you can eat up some of his money. So kind of a lot to think about, but and it's interesting to see because as we're about to go through these deals, we're about to get started here. Do you value hire one Shane McClanahan for $4 for 2 years of Shane McClanahan, 1 year at $4, 1 year at $9, or do you view Junior Caminero, Pico Armstrong, and Max Meyer, or whatever the third piece is from Chad, as like the more three depth pieces? So like I don't know if there's a right way or wrong way to do it. We talked about the Jonathan India stuff from a year ago, where it's like the timing kind of matters with some of the stuff. Or DL Hall, I think that's one that Chad has, right?
Yes.
Some of those pieces where it's like, well, do you want three maybes or do you want a sure thing? Me, I would rather have the sure thing, and that's kind of some of the head scratching that I'm kind of doing with some of Justin's moves here that we're going to talk about here in just a moment here. But it's kind of my mindset, especially if I'm giving up like surefire assets. If I'm giving up stars like Luis or Castillo and Schwarber and those kind of players, I need sure things back. And you did a good job getting a sure thing back from Steele. But let's go ahead and jump into that, unless there's anything else you want to say about the trading or rebuilding or anything like that.
Oh, let's do. I'm sure we'll talk more about it as we kind of go through them. So,
All right. So looking at some of the deals here, let's see, we've had a few trades here, starting with the big one that you and Justin made, which was you sent away Trey Turner, who's I believe, $37 A player. Let me double
yes.
check that. That's correct. Okay. And a Justin Steele who will be a $6 C player next year. And you let's see here. And you got back the pieces of Kyle Schwarber, Luis Castillo, and Ian Happ. Congratulations. Congratulations on winning the league with this move. Um,
Oh, come on now.
it I think it catapulted it put you on paper as the best team in the league right now.
Ooh,
You
jeez.
are currently the best team in the league. If you look at what this did for your starting lineup, it filled all of your holes. Justin did a good job of filling your hole. And that's what he did.
Anytime.
And you look at your pitching staff, and across the board, your pitching's good. You got the relievers, you got the starting pitching, and now your offense is pretty set. If I click on your team here, well, let's go to Eric's team here. I mean, it's hard to argue with. You pulled the trigger at just the right time. Your timing was excellent. You got in early. You didn't wait to the trade deadline to get June Schwarber. You had to get June Schwarber's
Five
art.
miles from me already.
Yeah, he's how many so far?
Five in the last 7 days.
God damn it! Like you knew this was coming, and Justin even knew this was coming. He's like, I don't want to trade Schwarber because I know he's about to get hot. And then he turned around and traded for him. And so I look at this lineup, it just top to bottom, it's pretty solid, pitching staff, everything like that. So I think right now you are the best team in this league. I mean, it's not going to show in the roto or head-to-head standings because you just made this trade, but I think that you are the biggest feared team right now. So yeah, I tip your cap to you and for you, I'm giving this an A plus. For Justin, not so much. I'll let you kind of talk about how the negotiations went here before I give Justin his grade.
The way I look at this from Justin, it's kind of what we hit on earlier, right? You're trying to get as many assets as you can. The way I look at it is I think Schwarber and Turner, I mean, if Schwarber continues this pace, I'm keeping him. I mean, I know we just had that conversation about whether we're keeping these higher
Sure.
price guys. I would keep him, no doubt about it. If you look at the season Trey Turner was having, and what he's on pace for, he's played 35 games. So if you times all his stats by 4, yeah, the home runs and the RBIs are down, but it's not like, I mean, you can say RBIs aren't really a player's fault. It's who's hitting in front of him. The steals, he was on pace for 40. He has an elite on base
He's on
percentage
pace. He's on. If you multiply by 4, he's on pace for 8 home runs and 36 RBIs. That's a
with a
key.
with 120 runs and a 390 on base and 40 steals. Yes.
Wait, if you multiply that by 4, okay, 100 and yeah, so about 100 and what, 112 runs and 40 stolen bases. Even though his career high in stolen bases is 30, and he's 31 years
It's
old,
not. It's not his career
he'll be
high.
32 next year. His career high in stolen bases is no, sorry, that's a lie. 2017 he had 46. So since 2020, okay, then he went 32, then 21, then 27, then 30. All right, so no, sorry, my bad. Not his career high.
Yeah.
But we've seen a downturn in his stolen bases. His speed is going down. He's not getting any younger. He's taken the Jose Reyes
How have
path
we seen a downturn in his stolen bases when last year he had the most he's had in 4 years?
because he didn't steal any the previous couple of years. That's why, because he went
Well, then it's
from
not a
stealing
downturn. He was on pace for
46 to
40 this year.
43 and then steadily declined. 35, then COVID year 12, then 32, then 21, then 27, then 30. It's going down. It's going
Well,
down.
here's the way I'm
Last
looking at
3
this.
years, it's gone up. But you expect a 32-year-old shortstop to suddenly steal more bases at age 32?
Sure. I mean, he's on pace for 40.
Of course, yeah, of course. Was that part of your sell job to Justin to sabotage him?
Here's the way I look at it. I think Trey Turner and Schwarber, when you look at fantasy rankings and everything, even heading into the year, they were rated almost. They do completely different things,
Yeah.
but they were rated almost identical in fantasy rankings.
Yeah.
They're almost identical price. So the way I'm looking at this, if I'm Justin, and this is kind of the way I took it, was you're trading Turner and Schwarber. Let's say that's a wash. Now you could argue it's not. You could argue Schwarber's way, but I get that. But from pure fantasy perspective, let's say Schwarber and Turner are a wash. He picked up Justin Steele on a $6 contract as a keeper for next year. So he keeps Turner and he adds Justin Steele. I mean, I know we can look at it all this and that.
Just gave you Ian Happ for shits and gigs.
And that's kind of the way. I mean, I said I needed a little bit more outfield depth. You're not keeping Happ next year. Would that be able to be thrown in? And that was kind of the sealed deal on that one. So,
yeah.
I mean, but that's kind of the way I look at it. I'm not saying Castillo has no value for him. Obviously, he could have made a trade somewhere else with him. But I mean, the way I'm looking at it is he picked up Turner and Steele as keepers next year. There's 2 assets.
Yeah. So full disclosure, I had an offer to Justin in his inbox. He is one of 3 teams this year that has had a Shane McClanahan offer. I offered him Shane McClanahan and Cutter Crawford for that same exact package that you got of Kyle Schwarber.
Now, let me ask you this.
And Ian Happ.
Could you argue that Justin Steele is the best of those 3 pitchers?
No.
Because Shane McClanahan's coming off an injury that it doesn't seem to concern you at all.
No, because he's gonna be fully ready for next year. I mean, he's basically gonna be ready by almost the end of this year, and he'll have a full spring training and everything.
And what's his career high in? I mean, he's pitched 120 innings once in his career. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I really haven't looked at.
And Justin Steele doesn't really have a big track record either. And Justin Steele has never had a sub-3 ERA even, and he had his great.
Who does anymore?
Last year,
who does anymore?
Does.
And let's see how many innings he's pitched.
Who, McClanahan?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm saying. We're looking at, I mean, you're looking at a guy that had 115 innings last year, 166 innings the year before. Last year, Justin Steele had a better year than him.
He had 123 and then 166. He was going to get another.
Right. But
he was going to be
what I'm saying, Kyle,
one 200 by if he didn't get hurt.
What I'm saying is Justin Steele literally had a better year than McClanahan last year. Like literally, he had a better year, and McClanahan's coming off an injury. So why do you view McClanahan as a better asset?
Well, first off, you get 2 full years out of him instead of just 1 full year, and he's watched a much higher ceiling than Justin Steele ever has. Shane McClanahan had a sub-3 ERA and a sub-1 WHIP 2 years ago, and a high strikeout rate.
And he's coming off an elbow injury that you don't think that's a part of.
Guys don't come back from Tommy John anymore.
Some don't. Some don't come back as good.
Okay. Everybody comes back from Tommy John. They pitch even better coming back from Tommy John.
And I know you're just as worried as anyone else that Cutter Crawford might have been overperforming. I mean, come on.
He had a pretty good week last year, but yeah, I think he's a little bit overperformed. But I also think he's also developed and he's young. How old is Cutter Crawford? But again, it's like
28's not young.
Cost of a $1 Cutter Crawford. Cutter Crawford just has to be average, a $1 player this year and next year, and then a $6 player the year after that. He's at 3.
I agree. I'm not saying that's a bad pack.
I'm not saying that. He's got 88 strikeouts, over a strikeout inning. Like
I'm not saying that's a bad package by any means, but you're talking about getting sure things. I think Trey Turner and Justin Steele are more of a sure thing than McClanahan and Crawford.
Trey Turner shouldn't be keeper if he's hit eight home run pace is not a keeper and freaking 36 RBIs. He's
Well,
not
yeah,
getting any
dude.
younger, and he's not going to steal. Probably, I don't think he's going to steal 30 bags ever again.
We'll see what he does the rest of the year in that lineup. But I mean,
He's been in
this
that lineup for 3 years.
and he's done very well. I mean, he's you
Uh,
act like you've been talking about this Trey Turner decline for years, and it's just not happened.
no, what?
He had 30 steals last year and didn't even get caught one time. It's not like he's still among the top 5 fastest players in the game.
He probably should have stole more if that was the case. He should have gotten halfway through the year and been like, "Hey, they're not
Well,
stealing.
when you have
They're
Harper and
not going to be
Schwarber, or
stealing."
when you have Harper and Castellanos and all them hitting behind you, you're probably not told to steal quite as much. But
Like he didn't have lineup protection with the Dodgers.
for the half a season he was there, yeah.
All right. So,
I don't think it's as bad as you're making it out to be. He got
yeah,
2 keepers from it.
he got one keeper from it, in my opinion, unless Trey Turner has a miraculous second half, which he had a great second half last year. So if he has a second half last year they had this year, then maybe he'll be a keeper. But if he played so well last year, then why'd you get him for $37? Like you
I mean,
still, you know,
I feel like
why
that's
would
still
you
one of the
he's underperformed this year?
he's not underperformed if he hasn't played, Kyle. His numbers are good outside of
Numbers are
the
not good. You an 8 home run pace. That is the pace that he's on.
Kyle, but here, okay, let me ask you this. If you even said the home runs kept pace at 8, obviously the RBIs are a little bit of an
You're not
anomaly,
keeping
right?
anybody who's hitting 8 home runs for $37.
If they're getting
End of
120,
story.
Kyle, if they're scoring 120 runs and they have a 390 on base
$37.
and they're
Go get
stealing
Stephen
40
Kwan.
bags, yes.
Go get Stephen Kwan then. You're not paying $37 for Stephen Kwan.
He will hit more home runs than Stephen Kwan. I mean, Trey Turner's always been a 20 home run guy. If you really think he's going to hit 8, that's fine. But
That's all I'm saying. I don't know why, if you're acquiring keepers for next year, I don't know why Trey Turner is the guy that you're acquiring, but I digress. Next, we don't really need to talk about the Langoliers for Thorpe trade.
no,
Langoliers, I guess, might help
Thorpe already got dropped, I think.
be a catcher. Did Langoliers get dropped yet?
I don't know. No, I don't think so.
I know Thorpe got dropped. So then we get to the next trade, which is Anthony
Yeah.
Volpe, McCutchen, and Ryan O'Hearn for Josh Young and Yuri Perez. Um, it kind of goes against my black and white trading thing because Justin gave up and Anthony Volpe, who when he first brought up, he said about Anthony Volpe, he's like, and I was like, oh well, Anthony Volpe, he's not really playing that well, he's not really a keeper. But I guess when you kind of look a little bit closer at his numbers, he's actually playing pretty decent. He's got 51 runs scored already, only 6 homers, 27
He's probably
RBI.
top 10 fantasy shortstop.
15 stolen bases and 322 batting average for $15. So maybe like a fringe keeper. He's kind of like in that Willy Adames range from the last 2 years where it's like, I got Willy Adames for 15. Shortstop, I don't, I have to throw him back. He'll get him for about that. I don't know. But the whole reason Justin made the Trey Turner deal is he said he wanted speed. But then he kind of traded away Volpe, who's got 15 steals. And then just kind of, I don't know. Like in this trade, he got back Josh Young, who is going to be how much next year?
11 or 12. I can't. Well, no,
Yeah,
14. Is it 4? Did he get him for 14? I know
uh,
Dex didn't keep him for 6, but
yeah. So let's see here. So he's gonna get Josh Young next year, $12, and then the year after that, $17. Has he produced enough to be a $12 keeper? I don't know. Maybe not. Who knows? So and then he also got back in that deal Yuri Perez. So if your whole argument is that you don't want Shane McClanahan because he's coming off of surgery and he's unreliable, and but then you're gonna go turn around and trade for a $20 Yuri Perez, what is the keeper value in a $20 Yuri Perez who can't get on the field? And like if Yuri Perez in the auction next year, nobody's gonna spend more than $10 on him, right? He's getting Tommy John. He's on the 60-day IL. He's not gonna. Is he gonna be back for opening day?
yeah, I think so.
So they got Tommy John surgery in April, it looks like. So I
Yeah,
don't think that puts him on track for opening
probably
day.
not. It's
A
probably going to be tight.
15-month recovery. So and then for like how good does Yuri Perez have to be to keep him for 20? We're not talking about $3 or $4 here. If you're like, well, if I just stash him, kind of like John Means was this year, where you're like, I know he's good when he's on the field, and John Means for $4 or whatever he is for, and like when he comes back, he'll be solid for me. You can't keep Yuri Perez for $20. That's massive. So like I'm questioning what the return is here and just kind of giving up all these other pieces. Like outfield's already thin. He's just giving up, McCutchen and Volpe and Ryan O'Hearn, two outfield, or I guess McCutcheon isn't lost outfield eligibility, it looks like, but O'Hearn, who's fine, nobody's really clamoring for him, I guess, other than Dane. McCutcheon and Volpe, it's like, man, I think I'd rather have Volpe for 15 than the two players he got back.
I don't know. I could see Jung and Volpe being pretty much a wash. Jung was very much worth $12 if you go off his stats last year. The 23 bombs, obviously 75 runs scored. RBIs are a little down, but then in the lineup he's hitting, and I do like Jace Jung a lot. He got off to a hot start this year. Obviously, extremely small sample size. I do agree with you. The Perez thing at $20 is tough, especially if he doesn't start the year next year. I really wish he was $10 cheaper. But Perez in his major league playing time has been very, very good. So I mean, yes, he is a lot more expensive than the Clanahan, so I could see where the tough decision is there. But I do look at them similarly in terms of ability, because Yuri Perez as a 20-year-old last year was very, very good at the major league level. So if he for some reason is ready by opening day, you couldn't really get many pitchers in the draft at 15-20 bucks. You just couldn't.
That's
And
pretty
I
much what
wondered,
everybody went for, around the $20 mark.
I don't know, man. It seemed like to get those top pitchers, you had to spend 25, 30
Wait,
bucks.
but you had to spend $20 on Yuri Perez knowing he was healthy. So what's
Yes.
going to be knowing he's coming off surgery and not ready for opening day?
Who knows? Who
So
knows?
that's
And
kind
maybe
of,
it ends up.
yeah. If he had 20, a healthy Yuri Perez is $20, not an injured, Yuri Perez. And we don't know what you're going to get out of him next year. And what do you see in the stat line that makes Josh Young worth $12?
Well, he missed. Well, I mean, that's about 75% of his season, right? So I mean, if you
He
throw
had
another,
almost 500 at bats.
yeah, I mean, at 122 games, you throw in another 30 games there, another fifth of a season. You're talking another 6 home runs, another 10 to 15 RBIs, another 10 to 15 runs. You're talking 85, 90 runs, 30
Yeah.
homers, and
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. So I guess if over full season, yeah, you're up to 28, 29 homers, 90
85.
RBI.
Yeah, I mean, it's he's gonna be good, man.
Yeah, no steals, no speed there. It doesn't look like. Although they talked about in spring him stealing more bases. So I don't know. Well, we'll see about that one. But another just kind of head scratcher there. And I guess while we're talking, let's just go right up to
Oh,
Justin's last deal. We'll skip the next two. We'll go up to Justin's last deal, which is trading away a surefire closer who's going to be the closer for one of the best teams in the league, the Atlanta Braves, Raisel Iglesias, and getting back 1 year of Masataka Yoshida for $6 and Dean freaking Kramer for a $1 player. And again, I just like, I guess this is the quantity over quality kind of idea, but it just like, I don't know why you're trading sure things for maybes. I'm not keeping Yoshida for 6 and Kramer. Who knows? I guess for $1, you'll take the flyer, but like that, I'm not giving away Iglesias for a maybe here. Kramer's pitched okay, but he's got a 4.26 or 4.32 ERA on the year. So it's like, what do we do? What are we doing here? Under a strikeout inning.
yeah. I mean, it's one of those things too, where I mean, are you keeping? I mean, I guess you're not keeping Iglesias at 21 either, though, are you?
Oh, but why would I just hold off for an actual asset?
But that's what I'm saying. At what point? How long do you have to hold off for? Are we talking late July?
You until the right deal presents
When
itself.
you might get six
And
saves the rest of the year from
there's
Iglesias?
no, because you're getting at least 2 months out of him, and you're gonna get more than 6 saves in 2 months out of the closer for the Atlanta Braves.
I mean, he's
But
averaging 6 saves a month, so I don't less than that.
yeah, but the trade deadline is 2 months out from the season, so you're talking at least 12 then, at
Yeah.
least 12 saves. So
I mean,
there,
my thing is
there
he
is a
got
timing,
two flyer keepers for a guy that he's not keeping next year. What's wrong with that?
there is a timing element because you and I don't always see eye to eye when it comes to this, and it's benefited you in the deal that you made here. But I know you'll argue the sooner the better because the longer those players are going to help you, build you up in head to head, build you up in roto, and I do see what you say in that where it's like it's better to make deals now. There's more value now than there is at the trade deadline because you're going to get more from that C player. But I just want you to wait until you get actual assets in a trade, what the right deal presents itself. And like I said, I'm always waiting to see like who's the guy that gets hurt, who's the guy that, as the example I gave last time, but let's suppose that a surefire keeper at a great price like Ellie De La Cruz, breaks a wrist and he's out 8 weeks. He has the Mookie Betts injury. Then you might look to trade him to go for assets this year, but then he's like one of the best keepers for next year. Or a pitcher has like an oblique where pitcher is going to be out for a month or two. Let's say Chris Sale or somebody or Cole Reagans or somebody that would be a keeper next year. strains his oblique. And I'm like, well, I'm in for this year. I want to trade this guy. He's not going to help me for the next 2 months. Give me this player that I can sub instead. So like,
Let
I
me
guess
ask you
I'll
this:
be more opportunistic.
Would you give up Woodruff for Iglesias?
No, no,
Okay. See,
I'm not.
that's a move to me. Like you get a dominant closer the rest of the year, and you give up a guy that's not helping you right now.
If I had a bigger need for closer at this current moment, like if they came out and said Doval is no longer the closer, then I would say, yeah, maybe I have a little
And
need for
yeah,
that. But I could also, I might offer that to Dex for Helsley and another piece instead. I'd still be looking
and
for more pieces of that because like that piece doesn't, it takes Doval out of my lineup and puts Iglesias in. It doesn't really move the needle for me to give up a 3 year or 2 years of one of the best pitchers in baseball for $1.
yeah, no, I see what you're meaning. I'm just wondering like where's the all in mode? I mean, you're talking about people like, hey, this will make me better. I mean, this is that all in move that I can not even an all in move. I just think it's a move that can make and that's kind of what I'm getting at with Justin. He's not going to get two keepers back for a $21 Iglesias, right? Does what
Uh,
he's not getting two. No one's giving him two keepers for him.
I guess
Two
guys a
actual
little bit high.
dynamite, like for sure keep, and
I would
that's what I'm
rather I would rather get one guy that I'm more than
okay.
likely to keep.
And this is where we'll play trade match is like what one guy is worth it. I mean, to me, again, he got two guys. Now, again, we can argue whether $6 a sheet is a keeper, but I think Justin, I'm not saying all these moves are going to work out perfectly for him, but this is a team that obviously needs a lot of help. So I think the fact that he's able to get two average depth guys on his team, two guys like a Yoshida who played well last year. This year, not at all. But like I said, I'm not in love with these trades. I'm not saying they're doing great, but Kramer was actually pitching pretty well until he went down. Last year, pitched okay, fine. So I think he's getting guys that could just give him that depth and kind of a little bit of that build because no one's giving two keepers for Iglesias.
I'm just afraid that Justin's going to rebuild and he's going to have nothing to show for it. Because if Trey Turner doesn't produce in the second half, Justin made all these moves, and the only thing he's going to have to show for it is Justin Steele. And
And well,
Josh Young, maybe, I guess. If
he's
Josh
going
Young,
to go into next year with so much money though, because Trey Turner looks like the only big
that's not
contract
the
he's
goal
going
of
to.
it of trading. Is not you could just throw guys back and go into with 26 players and $300 and just throw everybody back. So you can't use the money argument. You just say like, I know I want guys that are going to add to my roster for cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah, just build that, knock the whole thing down. Don't keep anybody, and then just build it all from the stock heap up.
No, I hear you. I see what you're saying. I don't think it's a horrible move. I don't. Like I said, no one's giving up two. I think people undervalue. I don't want to say undervalue closers. Geez, I can't believe that almost came out of my mouth. But people also don't want to give up. I mean, really, how many innings does a closer have left on the year? We're halfway through. A closer's pitched 30 innings. They got 25, 30 innings left. Are you giving up two keepers for 25, 30 innings? Are you giving up a keeper for 25,
It
30
depends
innings?
on the level, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. And you also have to think like if we have 5 sellers in this league or 4 or 5 sellers, that means we really only have 8, 9 teams that are actually relevant. So of those, if those 9 teams each have 2 closers, that's 18 closers. There's 30 closers, 30 MLB teams. So of those 30 teams, you're going to find 18 closers. It'd probably be pretty easy for those 9 relevant teams to find their 2 closers, and maybe that does devalue him a little bit. But I just don't like this early to send away sure things for maybes. Maybe Dean Kramer makes the All-Star team next year. I don't know. So maybe it'll all work out for I think $1 a contract, whatever. Maybe it'll
And
all
I
work.
think there is a little bit of a comfortability. And I know you keep saying like, oh, you could get Yoshida back for $1 next year. You can get Kramer back. There is a little bit of a comfortability of, yeah, maybe it costs you 2 or 3 extra, but knowing again, you're going in with 9 or 10 keepers. Okay, I can go in with this strategy. If you're going in with 3 or 4 keepers because you let go of all the little $1, $2 scraps, so there is something about depth. We talked about that a lot after the draft. I said a lot of teams do not have depth. A lot of teams are struggling for depth, and that is turning to be the case. So if Justin can almost build his keepers in a depth way and then go in the draft and get the superstars, I'm all for it.
Yeah. All right. Let's go. Next one we have Manny Machado and Freddie Freeman for Mookie Betts. Holy cow. I don't know how much there is to say about this trade. I guess we could talk about it like when Mookie Betts was healthy, did you like this return for Krim to get Freeman and Machado for Mookie? Obviously, within hours, Mookie Betts broke his hand, is out 6 weeks. So
Yeah,
it's gonna work out for
big
Krim,
caveat
work
there.
out for Phil. But did you like this return for this price tag for Mookie?
I loved it. I mean, I really did. I thought it was great because I mean, if you really
Great for
look at
who?
for Krim,
Okay.
because I mean, when you really look at it, if you put up Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts stats next to each other, they're doing about the damn same thing except for steals. I mean,
Yeah.
really, they're almost doing the exact same thing. They're hitting for almost the exact same amount of home runs. The
Yeah.
run scored is going to be a little different. Mookie's obviously going to have the little bit, but they're pretty close. So the fact if you can just add a Manny Machado on there, yeah, he's struggling a little bit, but I think the upgrade of basically saying, hey, this is almost a wash, not quite. There's a little bit of an upgrade with Mookie, but to also say, hey, I got a fucking 10-time All-Star in Manny Machado, and I could throw him into my lineup. I think it made perfect sense for Krim to do that. And I know he's been looking at Mookie trades. What is Mookie worth? Do I get 3 guys? Do I get more depth? I don't think he needs depth. I think this was a move where he could say, I got Freddie Freeman, one of the best hitters in baseball. I got Manny Machado, also one of the best hitters in baseball. I don't see where you could not like this for Krim.
Yeah, well, Manny Machado is not one of the best hitters in baseball. He's got like 6 home runs on the year, but yeah, that's neither here nor there. Yeah, I mean, I know I talked to Phil on the phone about it, and he balked at it. He's like, oh yeah, he wanted Machado, and I was like, well, how good is Machado? And I was like, how good are his numbers actually? And Machado's got 6 home runs, 33 RBIs, 5 steals, and a 301 on base percentage. Those aren't really great nurbers, but if Machado goes back to being who he was the last couple of years, then yeah, I
His
think
whole
it'll
career.
work out well for Krim. And obviously, the head was in the right place with some of these deals for both Phil and Krim. It just didn't work out for Phil, unfortunately. Yeah, I think it's value. I offered Krim Devers and Ronaldo Lopez was my offer for Mookie. So glad he didn't take that one, or else I would have lost Mookie Betts and Ronald Acuna in the same year.
Could you imagine of that
You
if
guys
you
would
would
have
have traded
fucking
Mookie to get him
loved
back
that.
to? Oh my
You
god!
guys just to trade get Mookie back, just have
Oh,
him
that
play.
would have been great.
Yeah, you guys would have never let me hear the end of that one. You guys would have been throwing a goddamn
Oh,
party in the streets if that would have happened.
alternate universe right there.
But I think at the end of the day, Krim seemed pretty confident in his pitching staff. He said, "I'm going to address the hitting instead." And yeah, maybe he also probably looked at Freddie Freeman and said, "I like his production better than the production of Rafael Devers." So a couple different ways to look at that. So
And also, like, why the hell are you doing that, Phil? Like, your team's out of it. You're not in it. I mean, we can talk about the injury. I mean, obviously, pretend there's no injury. Well, why do that? I mean, what are you getting? What are you gaining from it?
Yeah, well, there was some conversations about him reflipping Mookie Betts to me after acquiring him from Krim. So we kind of had started the conversations. We had talked about it a little bit in a similar deal, offering some of similar players, but it ended up kind of falling through, and
I wonder why.
by the end
Broken
of
hand.
the night, yeah, by the
But
end of
that's
the
my
night.
thing. It's like Phil's. I mean, who's keeping Mookie? I mean, again, this is the conversation we had earlier. Who's keeping who at certain prices? I'd be hard pressed. As good of a season as he's having, he's going to score 100 runs, 100 RBIs, 20 steals, a little over 20. Are you keeping him at 51? I mean, that's really tough. I mean, I'm not keeping Freddie Freeman at 47. That's just a little too much. I mean, and that's where I get at it with, or not get at it, but that's where I don't understand it from Phil's perspective. I obviously you threw in the extra detail of maybe a follow up trade happening, but it's almost just like why?
I guess because if you're talking about talking about like contenders, you're talking about like moving the needle of moves that we're gonna make. I could argue that Mookie Betts would have more trade value for keepers for next year than the package of Freddie Freeman and Manny Machado. Also because he's an outfielder, so like when I especially if Phil was eyeing any of my assets for next year, I was like, I don't need Freddie Freeman. I have a first baseman. I'm not going to trade for Manny Machado. So I was like, but I sure as hell would trade for Mookie Betts. Like he's an outfielder. Like I need outfield. So I think from that perspective, I think he kind of was eyeing that, and he was gonna obviously who doesn't love a star? Maybe he thought he had some depth he could fill in there, and then the drop off wouldn't be that good. And obviously, if you have an opportunity to acquire a top 3 player in the game, top 5 player in baseball, and Mookie Betts, you do it.
Well, then
So
so is I mean, literally throw up Fred. If you threw up Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts stats next to each other, they're Kyle. They're almost identical. I mean, that's what I'm
yeah.
saying. I mean, Freddie Freeman. I mean, throw up Bet stats just real quick. I already got
So
Freeman's. Like,
so Freddie Freeman's highlighted right here. So he's 47 runs,
okay, I'll
10,
tell
33, 3, and 410. Whereas Mookie Betts is 50 runs, 10
three
homers,
more.
RBIs. Yeah, so let's see here. Our runs and RBIs is a wash. Identical. Home runs is identical. Mookie has 6 more steals, and the on base percentage is .005 away from one another.
Yeah, and
Uh,
that's kind of my point. I mean, I get the position
but
versatility. I
the
get.
the position eligibility is a huge thing, and I wonder if that's
Did I just hear that from you? Did I just hear that from you?
Uh, not the flexibility, the positional the positional that they play. So being an
Kind of.
outfielder is way more valuable than being a first baseman.
This year, I don't think the outfield scarcity has really been a problem in past years. I don't think that's really been as much of a topic. I'm not saying it's
As a,
so I don't know. I would argue a couple years ago, I would argue him playing second base would have been super valuable, but I don't know. I just feel like the fact that the way I look at it again is the fact that they basically have the exact same stat line and Krim got to throw Manny Machado in there, even if he is underperforming. The last 10 years tell me he's not going to do that. So
you can go to any website and look at rest of season rankings or draft rankings or whatever it is, and you're not going to find Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts back to back. Freddie Freeman's a second round player. Mookie Betts is the top of the first round player. So I mean, it just is what you can look at the numbers all you want, but that's just that
well,
just
at
is
some point we got
what
to
we
look at the
expect out of
numbers.
most players. Yeah, it's just what we
At some
expect.
point we got to believe in the numbers after
At some
we're
point,
halfway through now.
who wants to do that? All right,
Yeah,
last trade we have was a very interesting one where we had you made a trade with Chad, sent away Ozzy Albies and received Reese Olson and Carlos Rodon. In that trade, you obviously got some pitching depth, which rounded out your pitching staff nicely, and gave away finally got a taker for one of your second basemen. This
finally.
what's that?
I said
Finally,
finally.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I really like this trade for both sides. It's one of the rare trades when I look at this. I'm like, wow, this is really something that kind of works for both. I'm going to give Chad kind of a B. I'm going to give you a B plus for it. I think both teams got better, certainly. Chad added offense, traded away his pitching depth, and you added pitching depth, which you needed. Two guys that are currently in your starting rotation gave away Ozzy Albies, who was basically hurting your offense with the numbers he's put up this year. Really
So I'm saying
underperformed.
throw up Albies and Machado's numbers next to each other, and they're
Yeah.
probably identical.
Yeah, something like it. But I think I think it works out for both teams. I think both teams certainly got better right now. You were able to put Michael Bush, who's probably got better numbers than Ozzy Albies, into your lineup this year. And then you added two pitchers, and then Chad added Ozzy Albies into his lineup and didn't really give up much pitching because he had the pitching depth to boot. I just think that it's going to come back and bite Chad because I just don't like Chad and how he has almost zero pitching depth unless he's trusting DJ Hers in his 14 career major league innings or Brandon Pfaadt with his 4.38 ERA. And then his starting rotation is all guys who are either innings restriction guys or injury history guys. So like I said, Sonny Gray, injury history. Tyler Glasnow, major injury history. Luis Heel, innings limit. Max Fried, injury history. Taj Bradley, innings limit and his injury history. So like and Taj Bradley, I don't know if he's a good pitcher yet. He's been pretty decent, pretty solid, 4.23 ERA, but well over a strikeout an inning and a solid whip. So he's pitched better as of late. But it's just like, man, this rotation is actually really thin now, and he is an injury away or a demotion away or an innings restriction away from him needing a pitcher. So I think this might bite him in the butt, but we'll see if they don't limit any of the innings and by some miracle Tyler Glasnow and the rest of these guys stay healthy, then it could really work out for him. And work out for you as well.
Yeah, my way behind this obviously is I had a ton of middle infielders. I was trying to trade Westberg. I was trying to trade Stott, possibly, obviously, Ozzy Albies. I didn't think, honestly, based on it, I know not many people are always looking at price, but based on his price, based on his production, I didn't really think I'd get much of a taker for Albies. I thought I would get more for Stott. I thought I would get more for even Westberg. Ozzy Albies, I've never been the biggest fan of his. I think he's one of the more inconsistent players in baseball. I think he has a great
Jackass
year.
doesn't love him.
Yeah, I'll say that he's on pace by far to have the worst year of his career. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's not even close. So the way I looked at it was I can throw in anyone. I got an abundance of middle infielders, and not only did I get two pitchers to kind of round out the depth, and you can never have enough depth. I think both the pitchers I got, if they continued their track record right now of their season, both of them they're keepers, both of them. And Chad right now, I mean, if Ozzy Albies continued his track record, not a single soul's keeping him for $30. So I felt
No.
like I had a little bit. It was just the perfect move at the perfect time, and I felt like it's going to work out for me. I was actually happier about this one in terms of yes, I feel good than the one with Justin because I really feel like I rounded out my team with this.
Yeah, you really did. Reese Olson, I think like for $1, the opportunity cost. I mean, it's the Cutter Crawford thing. It's like, for
Top
one,
prospect pedigree.
you don't have to be that good to be a keeper at a $1 play. And maybe I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth when I'm talking about Dean Kramer and how he's not a keeper, but Dean Kramer also has a 4.2, 4.3 ERA and zero track record. Reese Olson's got a decent track record of being a prospect. He's approaching a strikeout inning. He's got eight less strikeouts inning. Whip is a little bit low, but potential keeper. I'm not saying it's going to say surefire, but potential a little bit better than Dean Kramer. And then the other guy you got in there was Rodon. who's back to form now that he's not on my team anymore. Another guy, I hung on to Carlos Rodon and Sandy Alcantara last year, and then gave away all the guys that continue to pitch well. So mismanagement by me last year, yeah, cost me the championship probably. But yeah, so I mean, decent trade all around. So yeah, I think both teams got better, but I'm gonna give B plus to you, and I think it's a B plus for Chad right now, but it might end poorly for him. So I'm a little apprehensive. All right, we're probably already longer than we probably should have been through this point. So I don't want to spend too much time on going through team by team and what we kind of want from each team or what we see in each team. So we'll go reverse order in our power rankings and kind of what we have here and what we want
Sure.
to see from the teams a little bit. Let's just kind of talk about what we want to see addressed from each teams more than kind of what they are and
Are
all that
yeah,
kind of
because we
stuff.
kind of did that last pod.
And then
Yeah.
we'll talk about the mock trades that we had for these teams. So we'll start. We actually have a tie in our power rankings for 13th and 14th, and that's with Peter and Phil. So we'll start with the platoon here. We've kind of talked about in the chat what we see out of Pistol Pete's platoon, where he's got a lot of big salary guys, and I don't think he should keep everybody. With Bobby Miller, Zach Wheeler, and Paul Skeens and Garrett Cole. That's a lot of high salaries there. And then if you add in Aaron Judge for 51, Austin Riley for 40, I mean, we're talking about basically his entire $300 budget for next year. And I don't know if he's keeping Jackson Holiday. I don't know if he's keeping Jackson for 19, Jackson Churio for 20. So it's like he's going to have the sickness of he's going to have no money next year and a big chunk of his roster to fill. So I think he needs to make some trades happen. I think he needs to trade Zach Wheeler, maybe Bobby Miller. He's hanging on to Paul Skeens. I think he should trade Jackson Churio, being a valuable outfielder. He wants to hang on to him because he looked at what happened with Gunnar Henderson last year, and he thinks that Jackson Churio is the next Gunnar Henderson, so doesn't want to miss out on him giving away for 20. So I asked him about it, and then he needs to trade Austin Riley. So we know what he needs to trade, but is there anything that I missed there?
No, a lot of the ones I have for him are those names. So I got a couple mock trades for him, and those are definitely the names there. Yeah.
Okay,
Obviously,
why
Peters.
don't you go first?
Okay. We'll start off here. Okay. And now, how do you want to do this? Are you going to pretend that am I Peter and would you accept it as yet? Like, are we just going to say it and we give
You
our,
can you can throw them at me, and I'll tell you what I think.
okay, let's start with a big one here. Okay. Krim sends Bradish and Means.
Okay,
Okay. He sends Bradish and Means for Kohler Wheeler.
for one or the other.
Yeah.
Let's
So
see here. So
Peter gets two
John Means
cheap.
for $3 A, pitched well in 20 innings, can't stay on the field. Bradish pitched well. He's gonna be a $12 C, but it probably needs Tommy John at this point. But no, I'm serious. He's got a
Oh
UCL.
yeah, no, he's been hurt a lot. He has, yeah, no doubt about it.
Isn't UCL sprain is what leads to Tommy John, right?
Yep, yep,
So I mean, so they haven't announced it yet, but he's got the UCL sprain, which means he's probably maybe needs Tommy John. I don't know. It could to be determined. It could. They do the internal brace procedure as well, which is a shorter recovery timeline. I think Strider somebody got that one instead of Tommy John once upon a
right.
time. So I I don't hate it. I could see that working for both sides.
Because you're right, Peter cannot hold on to all those contracts, and they're valuable because I think they can definitely help people this year. Whether it's Riley, whether it's Wheeler, whether it's Cole, but
something that needs to be addressed before we go any further is I did put together a chart of how much money each team has. So really quick, I'm going to go through all those right now just so we have the context before we go through every team. Bryce only can acquire between his active salary players right now $46, and that'll drop down to 15 if he activates Joe Musgrove for 31. I have $104 of wiggle room. Chad has 111, but that drops down to only $45 of wiggle room if he activates Devin Williams and Kyle Tucker, which means if Chad wanted to acquire Garrett Cole, he could not because Garrett Cole would add, how much is Garrett Cole? 40 something.
46.
He's 46, and he would only, if he activates those two, he would only have $45 spent. He would go over the hard cap of that. So some guys might need to be careful with some of you. Like you can't just acquire an Austin Riley and Garrett Cole. Not a lot of teams can do that. So Krim's got 124, but I don't think it'll matter. Dana's got 101. He's got plenty of cap space. He doesn't really have anybody on his bench other than Evan Carter for 27, who will probably stay on his bench anyway. Dex has 121. It doesn't matter. Eric, you have $38 to spare. So you cannot really take on a big contract either. You could not acquire like a Freddie Freeman. Not that I know he's your favorite player, but you couldn't if you wanted to. Jay has $80 of cap space, but he also has Zach Gallen for 34 and Jordan Romano for 24. So really, he only has about $22 of spare cap space. Jordan has Lincecum prematurely. He has 119, but he has Snell for 31 and Trout for 32 on his bench. Peter has got 65, but it doesn't matter. Chris has 86. Phil has 138, but that won't matter. Tyler has 116 because the guys that he acquired from Peter were all the low salary guys. He didn't acquire Aaron Judge and Zach Wheeler and Garrett Cole. He got the Adolis Garcias and
Julio
Julio
Rodriguez.
Rodriguez, who are on lower salaries. He's got a lot of cap space. He doesn't have many assets left. And Justin has $199 of cap space, but that also doesn't matter. So the context of some of these deals like that will matter for some guys that do have cap space, some guys that do not have cap space. So,
And I know he won't. I know he won't trade Judge, but I do got a fun one with Judge. Okay, you
yeah,
tell me if this
he
is
probably should if he can get value again because the opportunity cost. He's got Judge for $55 or whatever he's got him for.
right.
I
Here's what I say for Judge. Chad
okay.
wants to win. Chad wants to go all in. Go to Chad's team.
Okay. Can Chad? This all have to fit in his salary cap space.
I think it might. I think it might.
So
How much does he have left over?
we'll go to Chad's team. So Chad's active salary right now is
With Kyle Tucker on the bench.
with Kyle Tucker on the bench. He has 111, but if you activate Tucker
Oh, so he still got plenty.
and Evan Williams, he'll only have $45. But
So still enough.
you could get that up to like 65 if you bench his two utilities.
Okay, here we go. Here it is. But and
Okay.
also trading these guys will factor in. Okay. Gorman, Bradley, and Mason Miller. 3 cheap keepers. Boom, boom, boom. You get out of the because Peter's doing actually a really good job, I think, of building keepers for next year.
Yeah.
And I think you get 3 more of those cheap keepers. I think again, it's hard to get 3 guys for Judge. Who's really again? Chad's not going to give up 2 of his best players. That's helping him win. You know what I mean? So I really think it's hard to find 3 for ones. I think that's around there. I don't know. You could tell me I'm crazy and I'm wrong. I say Gorman, Bradley, and Miller.
I wouldn't do it because then Chad doesn't have the pitching for it.
Yeah, I mean, no, you're probably right. Yeah, because we did mention how how less depth he has. True. Yeah.
Did Chad change his lineup since the last time why is Fott in his lineup now? Did he change that like earlier today?
Maybe for next week.
He benched Luis Heel. Yeah, this is okay. This is for next week. Interesting. So now he's got Luis Heel on the bench, I guess, and Brandon Fott in the lineup. I wonder if he's getting a 2-start or something like that. Yeah, I just don't think Chad has the pitching depth.
Makes sense. Let's hear yours.
But that's a solid haul to do. I would if I'm Peter, I would for that haul, I'd put Bobby Miller in there.
Yeah.
For Bobby Miller and Judge and get those 3 back. Taj Bradley, you're probably keeping because the whip and the strikeouts are probably
and there's the high prospect pedigree.
Being a keeper. If he continues this, you're probably keeping Gorman for 10 next year if he keeps this up. I don't know. That's a low on base percentage.
It is a low on base percentage, but the 40 almost on pace for the 40 bombs helps.
Yeah, but the counting stats aren't really there either. So maybe I don't know. I maybe if you put in Caminero or somebody instead of Gorman, I don't know who would have more value.
Right.
But and then obviously you're definitely keeping Mason Miller, who's a top piece for $3. I don't know how many more other surefire there is than that. So I kind of like it. I could be tucked into that for both sides, but I don't think it would work out for Chad. I don't think as a pitcher.
Right.
If you get like a Luzardo and Bobby Miller back. Then maybe we're.
I do have one more for Peter, but we'll wait till we get to Dana's.
Okay. All right. Well, all right. So here's mine for Peter, and it's a little bit more smaller scale actually. For Peter. So Peter turns to Bryce and goes, "Hey, I'll take." Now this isn't one of a non-black and white one. CJ Abrams and Tristan Casas. So you get 1 year out of Casas, 1 year out of CJ Abrams. So it's going to be an all-in for 2025. Doesn't help you in 2026. Abrams will be 12 next year, and Casas will be 12 next year. They're both the same contract, $7 B contracts. And in return for giving up those 2 players, Bryce gets Garrett Cole, Jesus Luzardo, and Jonah Heim. And now Bryce's hitting takes a downturn here because out of his starting lineup, he's taken CJ Abrams out.
Yeah.
He's getting an upgraded catcher in Jonah Heim. But then what he's really doing is he is taking and putting in Ezekiel Tovar becomes a shortstop. Then he takes Jorge Soler or Willie Abreu or whoever else into his utility. But then he's adding Garrett Cole, and his starting rotation becomes Garrett Cole, Scooble, Lodolo, Logan Gilbert, Chris Bassett, and then he's going to have Luzardo and Bailey Ober on his bench to kind of rotate in. And maybe he can turn Shane Baz into a utility player, or maybe he can trade. You might have some other assets that he can move for another utility player. And I think that would be a trade that makes a lot of sense. Where it's like you wouldn't think that Bryce would give up those players, CJ Abrams and
I would
and
do it if I was him. That
Christian
makes sense.
Thomas.
I like it.
But something like that. I feel like those. I hope I want at least one of these deals. The exact deal from that we say today.
From what we
I hope
say, yeah. I
that
do
would be
no, I
pretty
actually do
cool.
like that. That makes sense. That's a good one.
So
I was wondering how
you're gonna wait for Danes to say your other trade.
the one involving Peter. Yeah, we'll wait till we get to
Okay.
Dane's team. It's
All
got
right.
it's
So let's
got
go.
Gunner involved, so
Oh, okay. I did send an offer for Gunner, but it was swiftly declined. So let's go to a Phil's team, our other tied for last place in our power rankings. A team that it's just unfortunate circumstances. Guys regressed, and he made a trade for Mookie, he gets hurt hours later. Just unfortunate. Kevin Gausman wasn't as advertised. The one bright spot here is Emmanuel Clase, but maybe Justin wanted to get out ahead of Emmanuel Clase. Maybe he knew that if Dana were to acquire Class A, then he wouldn't have a buyer for Iglesias. So I guess it's a double-edged sword with some of those trades too. But yeah, just a team that unfortunately Phil is just dead in the water. Oh, I just got a trade offer from Jordan as we speak here.
oh, hey,
Uh,
hey.
yeah, nope, that's going to be declined.
Oh, I
He's
got
offered
one
a
too. He must
pitcher.
be sending them out. He must be sending them out.
He offered a pitcher for an outfielder. Hey, he knows I can't do that. I don't
Oh
need
yeah,
pitching.
that's
Just
declined. I
desperate
can't do
for
that either. I can't do that either. That's declined.
what do you have here for a Phil trade?
I got one, and I'll be honest, I don't really think he's got a ton of assets to be able to trade. Again, I'd even if I'm him, I'm even trading guys. Again, take a shot on him. Why not trade Xander? You're not going to get a lot from him, but just trade him. Try to get something for him.
Yeah.
Sorry, not Xander. Someone else had Xander. Sorry. Here's what I have. I actually have it with you.
Oh, okay.
Okay. You need a little outfield help. Everybody needs a little
I do.
outfield help.
I do.
Okay. I have you getting Marsh and Jock Peterson.
Oh no, I would never trade for Jock Peterson, but go ahead.
I mean, he's having a really good year.
Sound like
I
they
would
just play every day.
Marsh and Peterson for King.
Okay. King is movable. The price isn't too high there, where that actually makes some sense. Where if Peterson and who's the other? Marsh?
Marsh and
Marsh
Marsh
is got
is having a really damn good year. Yeah.
yeah, decent numbers. The problem I have here is like these guys are replacement level players. Jack Peterson and Brandon Marsh are basically what I am getting from Andrew Vaughn and Andy Pajes. Like I said, kind of said before. But so is Michael King and some of the numbers that he's kind of put up. One could argue as well. The thing I hate about Jack Peterson is that he's platoon. He doesn't play every day. He's been healthy all year and he's only got 174 at bats compared to a lot of guys that should have. Lindor has got 289 at bats. So like it's just the platoon really takes toll on the counting stats. Jack Peterson only has 27 runs scored and 33 RBIs, and he doesn't have double-digit home runs yet. He's got
which is the same another run than Vaughn, better on base.
Yeah, but I
mean,
could give up Michael. But Vaughn is free on the waiver wire, and I'm
but
not
that's my
giving
thing
him
though is
much.
everyone's needing outfield. That helps your outfield depth a little bit.
It's not bad. It's great. Give me Buxton instead. Buxton instead of Marsh.
Oh
Same thing.
God.
Marsh, same thing. 175 at bats. I think he was maybe hurt for a little bit.
Yeah, he
But
was. Yeah.
only 23 runs, 6 homers, 27 RBIs, 8 steals ain't bad, and a 348 on base percentage is really solid in this day and age. So not bad. I'd have
Don't
to
always
trade
need the
somebody
splash
for
moves.
2-for-1. Yeah, so it's a good non-splash move. All right, I got a blockbuster for you.
Okay. I got one more for you, but let me hear yours.
Okay. Mine, Phil gets on the phone with his good buddy Chad. We know those two get along.
Yeah.
They get along well. They like to poke fun at each other.
Sure.
And Phil says, "Here's what I want, or here's what I have to offer. Here's what I have to offer. I can give you Francisco Lindor, Tanner Scott, Alex Verdugo, and Kyle Gibson. Now, on paper, that doesn't seem like a great return, but I want to draw your attention to what Chad has on his team right now. Chad's starting shortstop right now is Willie Castro with his 5 home runs, 8 stolen bases, and only 21 RBIs. So he's got 41 runs and a decent on base percentage, but really like a 2.5 category producer. Willie Castro, he's triple or quadruple eligible, so he can kind of play all over. But Willie Castro is more of a utility guy, maybe a bench bat. He shouldn't be a starting shortstop with how good shortstop is. So he gets Lindor is now his starting shortstop. He gets Tanner Scott, which breaking news, Mason Miller will be in this trade going back to Phil. So Tanner Scott will be his closer with Robert Suarez. But you're thinking, well, why would Chad want to give up Tanner Scott, who's probably going to be traded? Well, because by the time that Tanner Scott gets traded, who's Chad going to get back? Devin Williams down here. So
There you go.
Chad's going to have 3 closers. He doesn't need Mason Miller, Devin Williams, and Robert Suarez. So he'll have for now he'll have Robert Suarez and Tanner Scott, and then in a month he'll have Devin Williams back to if Scott gets traded. And if Scott gets traded next week, he can go with 1 closer until Devin Williams is back. It's not a huge deal. All right. So and then after that, he's getting an outfielder. He's getting Verdugo, who's probably going to take the place of like Joe Adell or Max Kepler, who are both pretty garbage. And he's getting Kyle Gibson, who is not great, but he's stable, and this rotation needs stability. He needs a guy who he knows is going to be on the mound in August and September. If Tyler Glasnow goes down on the IL, or if Sonny Gray gets hurt again, like he always does every year, Kyle Gibson will just be a guy who will be on the mound. So those are the 4 players he gets, guys that will actually be assets for Chad down the stretch. And in return for the package of Lindor, Tanner Scott, Alex Verdugo, and Kyle Gibson, Phil gets Mason Miller, Luis Rengifo, who's a $3 A player who is on Chad's bench, 18 steals, good on base percentage. He gets Jeffrey Springs and DL Hall.
Yeah, it's not bad. I like it. I mean, like I said, we were talking shit over certain people's stats, but Renghifo's on pace for 40 RBIs and 8 home runs. But I
Well,
get it.
$3 A player, a bunch of maybes. I guess the one piece
I don't
that
mind it. I don't hate it. I just think Kyle's
Lindor is
got
really the main piece here. And I mean, but between Tanner Scott and Kyle Gibson and Alex Verdugo, those are guys that
right.
they don't really move the needle at all. But they're guys that Chad could utilize in a pinch if he needs to.
Sure.
So that they would be assets to a team like Chad, but aren't really, nobody's really looking to acquire Gibson, Verdugo, and Scott really and giving up much for them. So it's
Right.
Lindor and getting back Mason Miller is kind of the heart of it, and you can kind of interchange the pieces from there.
Yeah. No, I don't mind that. I like it.
All right.
I do got I no hold on. Was that for Phil or was that for you? No, that was yeah, I did that one. Okay. No, we're good there. All right.
Are you going to save your other Phil one for the other team?
No, I thought it was another Phil one, but I think it's just you. Yeah,
Okay.
it's another one
Oh,
for you.
okay. All right. So we'll move on from Phil and we'll go to our next team in the power rankings decks. It's hard to separate. There's a bottom 4. It's really hard to separate who's
Yeah.
power rankings is kind of futile. It's kind of whatever. Just whatever teams are okay now, I guess. But these teams are hopefully going to look a lot different a month from now than they even look right now. Some interesting pieces on Dex's team. Luis Robert is obviously a really solid piece, probably the best outfielder that's on the market right now. And then he's got obviously probably the best closer on the market too in Ryan
Helsley.
Helsley. And I wonder what he does with some of these pitchers like Nick Pivetta. You're probably not keeping him for 23. Are you keeping Eovaldi for 19? I wouldn't keep those guys at those prices. Just throw them back and get them for the same price next year. So I wonder if he can kind of package some of those guys like a Pivetta and Eovaldi and Yamamoto even maybe for 30. I don't know if he keeps him for that price and to maybe increase his return on guys, but he's been pretty quiet so far. He said the fire sale is on, but he hasn't really made any moves. So I'm a little disappointed in that. I know he had Luis Robert. I'm calling him out here. He had Luis Robert on his IR for like 2 weeks, even though he was active. So I'm concerned with Dex and his involvement the last 2 weeks. He started the fire sale. He checked out. So get it together, Dex, because we don't want to not lose you as a trade partner. What do you foresee as Dex's big moves here?
I actually have a few for Dex. I think he's really kind of an interesting position here. Obviously Robert's a big one here. Here's what I'll say. Okay, go to Chris's team. His trade partner
Oh,
Chris.
okay. All right.
Okay. Chris needs a little bit of lineup help. He needs a little bit of pop. He needs a little bit of out. Who doesn't need outfield help?
Yep.
Okay. So Dexter trades him Giancarlo Stanton
Okay.
and Luis Robert.
Okay.
4, Singer and Alvarado.
Oh. So he's got Alvarado on the bench. He's got Duran and Munoz. So he's got Alvarado 9, okay, and Singer for $1 a with a decent ERA, a strikeout in innings, 76 strikeouts, 77 innings. Singer's got some decent numbers: 3.39 ERA, 1.22 WHIP. I'd say for
And
one
he's got the
dollar that
pitching to pull it off. I mean, as much as we can, I'm not saying you want to give up all your depth, but I mean, he
yeah.
does have the pitching to pull it off.
So this one, very mid of you. Alvarado, $9 a for next year, assuming he's only 29. It feels like Alvarado's been in the league forever. And you assume hopefully he's going to be the closer, but I know they have that Hoffman who's kind of not knocking on the door as well, and thinking that maybe Hoffman might take the role at some point. But look for Luis Robert and Stanton. Is Stanton for 7 a better asset than both of those?
I mean, can you?
Stanton's a
I'm looking at it.
$7 a, right?
I'm looking at him like glass. So I'm looking at him like he's doing awesome this
Yeah.
year. Just get him on my lineup now. I'm not really looking at that as like a key. I mean, he could be. I mean, no doubt about it. But it's just one of those things like get it while you can type of deals.
If that is his best offer on July 31st, then yes, you make that deal for Dex. I feel like you might be able to get a little bit more for Robert, but I'm not sure who else
Okay.
has the piece. I mean, Chad, I think probably has more to offer than that, especially if you're also giving up Stanton. But I think at the same breath, you could just go Singer for Stanton.
Yeah. How about this
You
one?
know?
How about this one?
Okay.
Okay. Tyler. Go to
Okay.
Tyler's team.
You want to
Okay.
go Tyler? Okay.
Dexter. I got a couple with Helsley. Okay. Because
Okay.
I do think Helsley needs to be traded because $20. It
Yeah,
just makes too much sense.
I wouldn't keep Helsley for 20. You can just throw him back, get him for 20 next year.
Dexter sends Helsley to Tyler. I know Tyler's got some saves, but I really think he could.
Ewald and Bednar.
Yeah, I would send him to Tyler 4. And again, these can all be rated a little differently. If I'm Dex, I'm getting Severino, Gray, or Gore. Not
Uh,
enough.
Okay. Gore.
One of
Gore,
those
no,
three.
1.32 ERA for Gore is a little underwhelming. Good strikeouts, though. Decent ERA, 91 strikeouts, 75 innings. The whip worries me, 1.32. But
Gore's starting
I
in
think,
most rotations.
yeah, at this point, for $1, Gore is an asset. Severino is pitching better, probably strikeout rate way low. 61 strikeouts in
Yeah.
84 innings. Okay ERA, okay whip,
Or John
1.5.
Gray. If Tyler wanted to keep Gore and he decided, hey, I'd rather trade Gray, I'd still look at him for $12 next
I
year.
can't
And
believe
he's,
John Gray is actually an asset after being kept
I know.
accidentally and all that. But I don't know. John Gray, no, I wouldn't keep John Gray for 12. John Gray is not an asset with a 1.31 whip and 65 strikeouts, 65 innings. No, I'm not keeping John Gray for 12. So I wouldn't do it for Gray. Yeah, I mean, I would do it for Gore. For
Yeah.
Severino, maybe. Yeah. I mean, if Severino's your best offer, then yeah, I would probably do it for Severino. I mean, because I'm not keeping Helsley for 20. So yeah, I think small scale, I think it makes sense. But I also don't, I think Tyler needs good starting pitching, and I would rather play the matchups with Bet and keep Bednar and Seawald than give up one of the pitchers. I'd rather play Mackenzie Gore in a 2-start week and get a bunch of strikeouts and get 14 strikeouts out of him in a 2-start week. That provides more value to him than I think
He's
Helsley
just
might.
been in and out of his lineup more often than not. Not saying he's not
Yeah.
startable. I think Tyler's got more than enough pitching. I think Gore's in most lineups, but I mean, Gore and Severino, with the numbers they have, they're in most rotations. He's got an abundance of pitching.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you go right now and say Severino and Garrett Mitchell, and
Yeah,
you take a flyer on both those for Helsley, you might
I
might
would
have
think
might
so.
have a
Yeah.
deal there. But those are again two maybes, and I'd be hypocritical to say look at the deal that Justin made and for two maybes of what he gave up for Iglesias, and then be like, well, actually, if you do this, so
And you're going to kill me for this one, but another small one. Dexter sends Helsley to Jay for a $10 real Muto. And I know you'll kill me just because he's a catcher, but
yeah. No, because I don't think Real Mito was playing well this year. No, he was playing like shit. So why would you keep him for 10 when he's 34 years old next year?
still
As
one
a
of the best
catcher,
catchers in
not gonna
baseball, I
not,
think.
not gonna age well. Not anymore. Not with 7 home runs and 20 RBIs and a 309 on
Well,
base.
you're all about these dudes turning around and doing well, so
Only
maybe
one
he will
steal.
too.
Only no, you can't keep a $10 catcher who's actually not gonna produce for you. That's absurd.
I think those are most of my
Denied.
Dexter's ones. There is one I have with Krim. I don't know if it really makes too much sense, but I was thinking Krim, Muncie's out till August. Everyone needs outfielders. Muncie's still been a very good fantasy player. What if Krim just said, hey, I'll give you Muncie. He's 18 next year. You give me Robert.
Hmm.
Because Muncie's not helping Krim until August. Do you know what I mean?
Is an injured Max Muncy worth 18?
I mean, he won't be injured next year. I mean, he's worth
He
18
has
as a keeper
never
next year.
had a 500 at bat season.
He's worth 18
He has
in every one of
never
those years.
had 500 at bats, Eric.
He's worth 18 in every one of those years, though.
Uh,
Every one.
the on base percentage is okay.
330s league average. That's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. No steals, but
I
because
know,
he
but
doesn't
he's
play every
worth,
day, the counting stats aren't
yeah.
always great. Hmm.
But let's also look at Luis Roberts' numbers and not pretend like we say he's the best outfielder in the market. I know it's a small sample size. He's hitting 180.
Yeah, yeah, true.
I mean,
Could be.
also,
I would probably rather some of Tyler's assets. So
yeah.
I have a small
Let's see
scale
what
deal
you
with
got.
Dex, and I have a big scale deal with Dex. My small scale deal is with Jordan, because Jordan could use some outfield help. Let's go to Jordan's team here. Let's come prematurely. And his outfield is currently Brandon Donovan, Harrison Bader, Alec Burleson, and Steven Kwan. He's got Dalton Varsho in the utility and Mike Trout on the injured reserve. For him, I said, how about just a little swap of Edward Cabrera, $1 A, for Jesse Winker. Now, like,
Is that
I
a 7 I see on Edward
that is a
Cabrera?
7 ERA you
Okay.
see from Edward Cabrera, but we're not talking about anything surefire. We're talking about Jesse Winker here. C
Right.
contracts, small scale. What are you really going to get on the open market for Jesse Winker?
Sure.
But Edward Cabrera, I mean, 2 years ago, 3.01 ERA and a 1.07 WHIP and a bunch of strikeouts. And then last year, 118 strikeouts and 99 innings. ERA and WHIP were higher though, so it'd be really taking a flyer. But again, that's one of those deals where it's like July 31st, nobody's offering for Winker. Let's just do I'll take a flyer. Maybe this guy pitches in August, shows something, and for $1, that's that. We're not
Sure.
talking about anything surefire here. It's just like, hey, here's a small asset here for
Right.
here. It's a C for an A. And then I did do one with me and Dex, which has never been an official offer. I've asked for the moon from Dex. I'm not gonna lie. I've sent some egregious offers to Dex, basically offering him asking for everything for this player. But if I offer Brandon Woodruff, Cutter Crawford, and scraps, whatever other C contracts or Rizzo or Newt Bar or whatever else. So it's essentially Cutter Crawford and Brandon Woodruff, and I get Luis Robert, Ryan Helsley, and Nick Pivetta.
Ooh.
So
Um,
basically, Nick Pivetta takes Cutter Crawford's spot in my rotation. Helsley takes Doval, and then I get Luis Robert in the outfield. I give up Brandon Woodruff and Cutter Crawford. I think Brandon Woodruff
that's not bad.
and McClanahan are pretty interchangeable. I think McClanahan's a better overall pitcher, higher upside right now. But Brandon Woodruff's also $1 instead of $4.
Yeah, I don't hate that. Yeah.
So in a lot of those offers I've sent Dex, it's been like and Contreras and
Right. And he can't do
Yamamoto,
that.
and because like I haven't been desperate, so it's like I kind of
I
if
do
I'm
think there's a
in one of those,
Yamamoto path there. I didn't have him in any of my trades, but I've been kind of looking at his team and going, man, I think he could. Do I think Yamamoto's probably keeper at $30 next year? Probably with the season he's having. Do I think Dexter could maybe get a keeper or two back from him if he pulled the right move? I do. But that's also one of those he's got to wait for the right move because again, I do think he's probably a keeper next year.
yeah. All right. So those are the two that I had for Dex. So next, our top team in the power rankings, not our top team, our top team of the purgatory range of that bottom tier is Justin's team, who's also rebuilding. The Wahoo Maniacs. He's made a couple deals so far. The team is looking pretty bleak. He's has some keepers for next year, but he's trying to build the A and B contracts here as much as he can, but it's not really looking good for him. Again, my fear is I just don't want him to trade away his pieces and be left with nothing. And I haven't seen a lot of him get back a lot of value for what he's done so far. So, what do you have for Justin here?
I'll be honest, I don't have a ton because again, I don't think there is a lot of pieces on the
Yeah.
team, and the pieces that he does have are cheap, and I do think he's keeping them. So I really had to kind of do a little work here. Here's what I think. Michael Harris is not a keeper right now. No one's keeping him at that price. Try to get something for him, send him to a competing team. Why don't we send him to Chad for Caminero?
There might be something to that. Before there was a framework of that deal, I heard a rumor. The rumors are saying there was something around that deal before Michael Harris got hurt.
Oh wow.
I think that there could be something to that, but in a month from now, if Caminero is in the majors, and Michael Harris is back to being healthy. Michael Harris is going to be out for a while. He's going to be out for a month plus, I think. Grade 2 left hamstring strain. It's going to take a while. They don't even put a timetable on it. So it's going to be, they say, well beyond the minimum of 10 days. So, I mean, we're talking probably post All-Star break
Yeah,
for Michael Harris. So it makes it tough. Plus, he wasn't producing before the All-Star break
right.
or before the injury. So I don't think I'd give up Caminero for him. But it's not like I don't view Caminero as a keeper either. If we look at what Caminero has done, or sorry, he hasn't done anything. He hasn't debuted yet. But
Yeah, no.
for his price, he's what, $14?
10.
He's 10. So you'd have to ask a lot to be a keeper for 10. So like I
You'd
say,
have to ask a
best
lot for
off.
Cheerio to be a keeper at 20 right now.
Oh, I wouldn't keep Churio for 20.
No.
Hell no. Which is why I would trade Churio because he's an outfielder. He's in high demand and trade him while you can.
Right.
Yeah, I could see it, but I could also just see, yeah, I guess something you could just say like maybe Pete Crow Armstrong, Caminero, and one of these pitchers, DL Hall, is probably just for Nimmo and Harris. I think would make some sense too. I think that there could be a deal between those two. See what you have here and take a dice roll on some upside with what DL Hall could be, with what Caminero could be, with what Pete Armstrong could be. You know that Justin loves his Cubbies. That's the
Oh,
way to
yeah.
win his heart. So it could be something that
Or
he would.
honestly, at this point, try to try. I mean, I know DLX's DS season has not been good whatsoever. He's got 16 saves. Do you try to get even just a flyer from him? Do you try to get someone to take a $1 or $2 bench possible keeper flyer? I
On
don't know.
who'd you say?
Oh, Diaz.
Oh yeah, maybe.
I mean,
Maybe he
he's
can get fired
closing.
for him,
I know
but
a lot of teams have closers, but I mean, if
but
you could
he's
just,
putting up Doval numbers.
you're not keeping him though. I mean, if you could just get,
Probably not. Yeah, probably not. Maybe you
but
can
I
get.
don't have a ton for Justin because again, I think obviously you're keeping Flaherty at one. That might be one of the best contracts in the whole league. It might be if he keeps doing this. You're keeping Steele. You're keeping Imanaga. You're keeping Cronenworth. You're keeping Morel. You're keeping Turn. So I mean, he's got. You don't really want to trade those pieces. So there's not a. There really, I think, isn't a whole lot of work here for Justin to do. Paul's
Yeah,
a De Jong's one. I think there's teams that need power out there. He's on pace for 30 bombs. Try to get something for it again.
Chad could use a DeYoung.
Yeah, try to find a flyer on someone. You're not going to obviously
There,
get a
there
lot,
should
but
be there should be a trade between Justin and Chad. I
yeah,
think that is pretty obvious because Chad could use a lot of these offensive pieces and stuff that Justin has, and I think Justin, if he's going to continue to take flyers, if he wants to trade for guys like Dean Kramer and such, he should want to take flyers on guys like DL Hall and others. So that's kind of what we have here. And before I go any further, before you can at me, it would be disingenuous if I did not point out that why are you criticizing the acquisition of Dean Kramer with a 4.3 ERA and then telling me to acquire DL Hall with a 7 ERA.
or Everett Cabrera.
Yeah, or Edward Cabrera with their 7 ERAs. Those are just guys that have had a lot of hype as prospects, and they're just flyers that you're taking chances on at some point, not really giving up much of an asset for as throw-ins, not really the guy you're headlining a deal around. So I'm not trading
Right.
Iglesias right now straight up for those players. At this point, a month from now, if that's the best you can get, is that, then sure, take the flyer on it. But it's just too early to trade. If that is the main piece of your return is DL Hall, then no, you're not doing that. Dex should figure out what he can get for Winker, and it shouldn't just be Edward Cabrera. It should be what he could get for first. And that's kind of the fallback plan. All right. Next in our power rankings, we actually have a Krim actually down here. He is the
At 10.
the
And this
lowest
is where it gets
of
interesting.
the
Yeah.
lowest of the teams that are hanging on for dear life.
And are we saying our personal ones? I know we're doing consensus. Are we waiting that till the end?
You could say your personal. I had him as ninth. You had him as 10th.
Yeah, okay. So we're pretty much on. So we both have them close to the bottom of those playoff caliber. Because really, I mean, we look at those standings, 5 through 10 is tight. So this is really when we're starting getting into these are teams that are every week
What do you say?
matters.
You say there's probably about like what, 4 tiers. So there's the bottom feeders that we just got through. Then there's like the hanging on for dear life. Then there's like the fringe contenders, and then the juggernauts.
Yeah, I would say so.
Probably about 4 tiers. All right. So this is the lowest team of the hanging on for dear life tier. Why do you have Crim so low? You have him one spot lower than me.
Um, I really could on a lot of these teams. I could interchange some of these like 7 through 10 teams. I really think they're that close. There's some teams I like this team's pitching more, this team's lineup more, this, that more, this, that more. I do like the trade he made in regards to the Mookie thing, but I just think at the end of the day, I just feel like it's missing a little something. We're looking at still a little bit of needing a little bit of help in the outfield. Friel just went down. He's got guys like Frelick starting out there, Kalenic out there. He's got guys like Rojas in his line. I just think there's still too many holes in the lineup despite that move. And I don't love the lineup as much as I like a Jordan's lineup. I don't like the pitching as much as I like, someone else in there's pitching. So it's almost like it's a mix of both. I think he's got an
Yeah.
okay lineup and okay pitching, but he's not elite in either.
Yeah, what is this team's calling card? It's not, I don't see a lot of promise in this pitching staff. It's pitched okay, but I don't really expect, it just a lot of guys with 3 RAs. I don't expect Kikichi to kind of keep this up with his high whip. Aaron Nola can kind of be up and down, but he's, still one of the best in the business, you could call it. Marsh, 3.99 ERA. I don't know what you're going to get much out of him. And, in the lineup, yeah, like you said, it's a lot of gaps here. A lot of lackluster. Yeah, I just don't really know what this team's actually good at. So,
And to be fair, out of all of the teams that are in playoff contention, he's actually got a worse roto score than Justin. So if we're going based off roto, his team is worse than Justin. Justin's just had a lot of really bad head-to-head luck. Krim is 11th in roto. I mean, he is 13 points behind Tyler. He's 18 points behind.
10th in head to head.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's 18 to 20 points behind Jay and Chris. So his team really is hanging on by a thread in terms of head to head, which is why I like the move he made. But there's still a little bit to, and I like Krim's team heading into the year a lot. So
Yeah. All right. What do you have for him for trades?
I kind of like this is where it is going to get crossover a little bit. My big one for him was the Bradish and Means for Kohler Wheeler. That was
Okay.
kind of my big one for him. Not sure if it would get done. Not even sure if Peter would do it because again, I think Peter sometimes is not overvaluing guys, but like you said, maybe he's holding on for the right deal. Why not? They're A's. But that was kind of my big one for him was get the pitching. I think you need another big one. I think Kohler Wheeler for Bradish and Means.
I think it makes some sense for his team certainly, and Krim will never get criticism for not trying to make the all-in move and trying to go for it. He will be aggressive, and I admire him for that. So respect to Krim for always doing that. I have a 3-team trade involving Krim, and it's the only one I have for Krim, so I'll do it now. Here are the teams involved. It's you,
Oh,
uh,
geez.
it is you, Krim, and Chad.
Oh,
Here's what,
nice.
here's what the deal is.
Inferno.
So, Eric, you get some salary relief because you could use an upgrade at first base, but you cannot afford Crimmy's first baseman because you don't have as much wiggle room as some. You only have $38 of spare money. So it would be a tight squeeze to fit $47 Freddie Freeman into your lineup. So that's why you're going to take Bryce Harper off one of your favorite baseball players in this
Heck
world.
yeah.
I know you love Bryce Harper. You're going to
I'd be
take him
surprised.
off of Chad's hands. Now, Chad, for giving up Bryce Harper, he is going to replace Bryce Harper with Freddie Freeman. Not too far of a maybe downgrade, but you like Freddie Freeman, his numbers what he's done
Yeah.
this year. Harper's gonna have more power, but Freddie Freeman's gonna bring the OBP and the counting stats and maybe chip in a few steals. So not bad. But he's also gonna add Alec Bohm. So he's going to downgrade Harper. He's going to add Freddie Freeman and Alec Bohm. And Crimmy, for giving up Freddie Freeman and Alec Bohm, is going to get Kodai Senga, Caminero, and Andrew Abbott. So
So
you're
you're
giving
saying
up.
so you're saying Krim should sell. Krim's
So
done.
yep. So you're getting.
Okay.
So you're giving up Abbott, Senga, and getting Bryce Harper. Krim is giving up Freeman and Bohm, getting back Senga, Caminero, and Abbott. And Chad is giving up Bryce Harper and getting Freddie Freeman and Alec Bohm. Who says no, Eric?
I don't say no. I don't think Chad says no. I think Krim, if he's still going for it, probably says no. I don't think that's a bad return by any means, but that would full on be throwing up the white flag, obviously,
So, I
without
mean,
doubt.
I'm assuming you're banking on Kodai Senga coming back and being one
I
of
mean,
top
I mean,
a top 20 pitcher next year. You're gonna get him for $13 next year, hoping that he replicates what he did all year last year. And then you're
yeah.
taking a flyer on Andrew Abbott as a $3 A, 60 strikeouts and 79 innings, bad strikeout rate, but a 1.2 WHIP and a 3.42 ERA. And then you're also taking a flyer on Caminero, Junior Caminero from the Rays. So you're
Well, Krim is here. Do you say no, Krim? If
yeah.
he's still
No, he was.
listening.
I don't think he's here anymore. I think he.
Oh, dang.
So yeah, but I think that would be an interesting one.
If I had to guess, I would say Krim would say no. I still think he is going for it, and
At this
I don't know. Part of me wonders if he doesn't think that's quite enough. But again, if you're not going for it at that point, is a C, right? So
yeah.
yeah, I don't know. That's interesting.
Hey, you like that one, huh?
Put in
Yeah,
some homework
that,
there. I
that was
like it.
my one three-team trade. Unfortunately,
Okay.
I
You
didn't
do
have the
like your three
time
sums.
and energy to do a bunch of three-team trades. So that's what we have for Krim. Let's see.
Okay.
Next on our list, we have ninth is Dana. Dana coming in at ninth in the power rankings. It was hard to make a trade for Dana because his team is kind of locked. He doesn't. I don't really see how many keepers do you see on this team? Do you see any keepers here? Cattell Marte, Kim, I got Henderson. Yeah, hard to be trading those. So those three.
Well, you're not gonna like the first name I say.
Maybe Volpe.
Will Smith.
Uh,
Dude, 20 bombs, 100 run or 100 RBIs, 350 OBP. It's
mm,
$15.
$15.
Yeah.
No need to keep
No,
them. Throw them back and
I
get
do see a lot. I do see
15
keepers.
again.
Smith, Marte, Kim, Henderson, Volpe. Pitching wise, Keller's an easy keeper. Lugo, I mean, would be a keeper at this point. Finnegan's a keeper. So he's got eight, nine.
If Finnegan doesn't get Finnegan's probably getting traded, first of all. And so I don't really know what you're getting there. Framber, you said Framber? Who just know? You said Lugo? Yeah,
Yeah.
Lugo keeps pitching the way he's pitching for sure, Lugo. But
Keller.
these are also guys he's probably not trading, I would
No.
imagine. So it was hard to make a trade for him. What does this team need to get him? Because we have a ninth in the power rank. We have him pretty low. So we
And I
obviously
have him eighth. I think you had him
I
10.
had him 10th.
You had him worse than Krim.
I had him worse than Krim. I just,
Interesting.
there's just a lot here, a lot of nothing here. I don't know. I think that a lot of his pitching is going to regress.
See, I look at that lineup instantly. That Smith, Olson, Marte, Kim Henderson, that five core right there
Oh yeah, yeah.
Kills Krim's
If you just
lineup.
cover up the bottom, that is Ryan O'Hearn, Brenton Doyle, Nolan Jones,
But that was
Matt
a lot of Krim's
Yearling,
lineup too.
O'Neill Cruz, Volpe. Yeah, if you just ignore half his shitty ass lineup, then yeah, it looks pretty solid. So yeah, I mean it's okay. It's not great, but I also think the pitching's going to regress backwards too. He's got Jake Irvin, who's nobody, low strikeout rate with Washington. He pitched okay. I don't know how much he'll keep it up. Lugo is not going to maintain a 2.4
You
ERA.
don't think so? No.
Mitch Keller's got a 1.25 WHIP. So I think his ERA is going to go up a little bit. Framber Valdez isn't really a great ratios guy. He's going to have a high whip either. He's got Tobias. Who the fuck is Tobias Myers? He has him in his starting rotation right now. So like, just a lack.
So this is a good segue then. You're right. He does not have much he can't trade, or he doesn't have much of value that wouldn't take away from his team now, right? So let me bring up my Gunner trade for you. I know Gunner's been on the market. Gunner has, it's been in talks, but it's hard to trade Gunner, right? He's probably the MVP in the game. Okay. Do you do this? Go to Peter's team.
Okay.
Okay. And Dana wants to go in. He wants to try to win it. He's on the edge, right? I don't think he's a game out of the wild card race. I mean, sorry, not wild card. I keep saying that. Well, I guess technically it's
might as well be, yeah.
I know. He's a game back. He's literally seventh. He's the next team in. As much as we want to rank him 9th or 10th, he's the closest in head-to-head to a playoff spot. Okay. Gunner for Cole and Austin Wright. Austin Riley has obviously not been his usual self, but you're banking on the next half of the season, and you get your ace, which he desperately needs pitching. Desperately.
I wish we had like a GM poll of like what are the best trade assets in the entire league right now. Like if you're talking 2025 trade assets, would you rather have 1 year of a $32 Gunnar Henderson or 2 years of one of my pitchers? Because Peter does have offers in his inbox. He has a McClanahan offer in his inbox. So would you rather 1 year of Henderson at 32 or 2 years of McClanahan at $4 and at $9 for 1 year, $9? Like
it's tough. I will say this, Kyle, the odds of all 5 of your pitchers on the IL actually coming back and being great are not there. You know what I mean? Like even if 3 of them hit, I would say you're happy. So it's just tough. I mean, I don't know. They're still, as much as we might like them, as much as you're like, man, I can't wait for all these guys to come. It's still a gamble.
Because it's twofold. And the reason why I don't love it is that you're only getting 1 year out of Gunner because this year doesn't matter. And so you're only getting 1 year out of Gunnar. And it's also Peter doesn't really have the money for it unless he trades all of his pitching, unless he can get rid of everybody and clean the slate. Because we're already talking about Peter's financial struggles for next year and how he's got doesn't have enough money for next year as is. And then he's going to keep a $55 Aaron Judge and keep Bobby Miller and keep all these high salary guys. And then he's going to add Gunnar Henderson to it. I see the appeal. I see he does love his stars. Peter could be talked into it. He's a star
Well,
chaser.
he's not keeping Austin Riley regardless, right? I
No.
mean, at $40 right now, he's not. So you're getting Gunnar Henderson. He. I don't think he can keep Cole, Riley, all.
No.
I mean, Cole, Wheeler, all. So you're telling me he can go
Wheeler's
into
worth keeping at his price if he keeps pitching the way he is right
yes,
now, but not
yes.
Garrett.
I mean, we could argue Garrett Cole will be too if he comes back and lights it up, but you obviously can't keep them all. But I mean, if you can, I mean, he's already going into next year with a rotation possibly of Skeens, Wheeler. So Skeens and Wheeler on its own is a nasty one too going into next year. Throw on Gunnar Henderson in your offense. I
Mhm.
mean,
But he's
that's
not gonna have money to build the rest of his team. He's gonna if he does that, he'll be in the exact same spot he is this year. If he goes into next year, he's like,
maybe
I'm gonna build around Judge, Henderson, Garrett Cole,
Otani coming
Bobby
back.
Miller, and then I guess Skeens and Otani. I guess his pitching will be solid, but I feel like he'll
That's
be doing the stars and
already
scrubs thing he did this year that failed him this year.
see. Here's the
And he's
thing
gonna
though
run it
is
back.
here's the thing is he didn't have Skeens all year. He didn't have Otani all year. Okay, so you add if he keeps Wheeler and he has Skeens and Otani as rotation
He
next year. That is
he has to hit on the $1 guys, which
I
he
know,
has
but
not for 2 years now. He has
that's
not
fit.
hit on the $1 guys.
But here's the thing: those three pitchers alone are $67. Those three. That's I could argue right now. I don't think we will have if I was to say he holds on to Wheeler, Skeens, and Otani, there will not be another team in this league that has a better 1, 2, 3 heading into next year.
What about the 4, 5, 6, 7 in his
I mean,
offense?
that's fine. I'm just saying that 1, 2, 3 only costs $67. That's not to say it's the best in the whole fantasy league, and it costs you $67 for those three. That's not bad.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see. I have a smaller scale deal for Dana. I look at Dana's roto, and Dana is currently uh 3 RBI roto points and 4 on base percentage roto points. So he's pretty weak in RBIs and on base percentage. He also is pretty weak in pitching. He's got his roto. He's got 2 points in saves, 7 points in strikeout, 7 points in ERA, 5 points in WHIP, and 10 points in wins quality starts. So we could just use a little boost to the pitching staff and some RBIs and runs. So what I did was I paged over to the player screen. I sorted by RBIs and I was trying to say like, all right, who can be like an RBI on base percentage guy that can maybe help Dana's team because he doesn't really have assets to. He doesn't have keeper assets to give up to get a guy like Austin Riley or Aaron Judge or Luis Robert or any of those guys. So like I had to take those guys off the table. And I finally settled on this player right down here. He's an outfielder. Let's see here.
He needs outfield. Who doesn't, right?
He does need outfield, and the name is going to shock you here. Oh shit, where'd he go? How am I even drawing a blank on the name? Oh, here he is with 47 RBIs and a 419 on base percentage. Jerkson Profar on Team T Pain. I could not believe these numbers when I saw them. 256 at bats, 42 runs scored, 10 homers, 47 RBIs. So he's like top 20 in the league in RBIs with a 419 on base percentage and 4 steals. On Tyler's team, who's cluttered in the outfield, he's got nothing but outfielders. I don't know what Tyler values Profar as, what it would be, but he's on a C contract. So if let's see here, if Dana calls Tyler up and says, "Hey, I have all these shortstops here. If we go to Tyler's team, Tyler, the position doesn't really matter because he's got so many outfielders. He's just kind of filling utility. Adamas is a shortstop, but he's swapping out utility anyway. He says, "Hey, why don't you take a flyer on O'Neill Cruz? I'll give you O'Neill Cruz for Jerkson Profar." And who did I say? I think I said Michael Lorenzen. Yeah, Lorenzen. Lorenzen, who's nothing, he's just C contract, nothing to write home about. Low strikeout rate, but a 3 ERA, 3.0, and a 1.15 whip.
Why would Tyler do this again?
Well, because Lorenzen's on his bench. Lorenzen's not going into his lineup because Tyler has a lot of pitching, a lot of decent to mediocre pitching. So Lorenzen's going to be on his bench because he's got Mackenzie Gore on his bench and Tyler Anderson on his
But
bench.
does
So
O'Neill Cruz start anywhere?
No, but he's selling current performance for future performance. If I told you if you could turn Profar before I put the hang on a sec, before you make that face, before I put the numbers in front of you, if I told you you could turn Profar into O'Neal Cruz, you probably do it, right?
No. O'Neal
Really?
O'Neal Cruz has not done it at the major league level yet. How I mean,
Really?
how long do we wait until like he does it? I mean, Jerks and Profar is probably the
So,
model
so he's
of
got Michael Harris numbers. Is that what you're trying to say?
yes. But Michael
And
Harris is
Michael
actually
Harris is a fucking god,
but
according to
Michael
you
Harris
guys.
has actually had two productive years in the MLB. I mean, O'Neal Cruz has not.
I mean, he was hurt all of last year.
Here's my thing. This is why that trade makes absolutely no sense. Tyler's competing right now to try to make a playoff spot and do well. Jerickson Profar is a very, very big reason for that. Why would you trade him
We're
to
talking about
have
Jerks
O'Neal
and
Cruz?
Profar here. We're not.
And okay, we're talking
What?
about listen, we're talking about Jerickson Profar here, and those are do those numbers not count because of his name?
They do, but I don't think he's going to continue them.
And what makes you think
But
O'Neal
maybe
Cruz? What makes you think O'Neal Cruz just randomly will?
because in half of a season and 300 at bats, he had 17 homers and 10 steals. He basically, so it's like a 30 home run and 18 steal pace is what he did his rookie year, his only time he was healthy. And now he's going into his second year. We're young. It's the Michael Harris argument that you guys all
Michael
jumped
Harris is
on Michael
Michael
Harris's
Harris.
dick because he was young and he was toolsy and he did it his rookie year in a small sample
Look at
size.
Michael
And we
Harris's
expect
first
him
two
to grow. We
years.
don't do the same thing for O'Neal Cruz, who's probably the most talented player in the entire MLB.
That's the dumbest thing I've heard yet.
He's the toolsiest player in the entire MLB.
There's a
We
better
get that.
dude. There's literally a better guy in baseball with the same last name.
Yeah, okay. Who is
You
probably a higher striker rate than he does
you're
and
taking
can't throw the ball as
you're
hard and can't
seriously
hit the
wait,
ball
hold
as
on, hold on,
hard.
hold on. You're seriously gonna tell me you would take O'Neal Cruz for the rest of his career over Ellie?
No. Actually saw that on a Twitter poll. It was like, who do you think's gonna have the better career, O'Neal Cruz or Ellie De La Cruz?
I mean
It
I'm
was
not saying
like 70% Ellie De La Cruz.
yeah, I'm not saying I've seen like a ton of Pirates games. Obviously, I've watched a lot of Ellie this year, but I don't think there's anything in my mind that would think that.
You can't fake 122 mile per hour exit velocity, and nobody in the league other than Giancarlo Stanton and O'Neal Cruz can do that.
Yeah.
Hit the ball as hard as he does, run as fast as he does, and throw the ball as hard as he does.
Yeah.
O'Neal Cruz is an anomaly.
Yeah.
But all right, if you say it doesn't make sense, I think that rest of season, I think O'Neal Cruz
But here's my thing,
will be better than Profar will be.
I'm with you on the whole track record thing, but the track record's not there yet, right? So my thing is like it just doesn't make any sense because you're literally giving away better production for worse production right now. And we are halfway through the season. So at what point do you say these are the numbers? This is kind of what we should expect from them. O'Neal Cruz, it's not like he's had a 30-30 season where it's like, well, he can get back to that. He's never done it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so you buy Cedric Mullins because he's had a 30-30 season.
The one time he's hit 30 home runs, yeah.
All right, so that's all right. Just a kind of smaller scale there. All right, you said doesn't make sense. I would think that O'Neal Cruz has a higher ceiling. Rest of
What does that ceiling give you for 2 months left? It's a C contract.
I mean, all right. O'Neal Cruz in 2 months has the ability to hit 25 homers and steal 20 bases. He won't, but I'm just saying he has the ability.
I don't know if he has the ability to do that. I mean, what makes us think that?
Though how hard he fucking hits the ball and what he did in his rookie year, that was really pretty solid in 330 at bats. All right, next we have next in our power ranking coming in at number 8, we have Chris's team, who's performed pretty well in head-to-head roto, kind of middle of the pack there. Like I said, 77 roto points. There's kind of lackluster, kind of lacks some star power, but overall it's a decent team. He's got Bobby Witt, I guess, is his one star, but he's got a weak outfield just like everybody else. The pitching staff is kind of overperformed, kind of underperformed at the same time. I'd say that Freddie Peralta has underperformed it with his 4.38 ERA, but a lot of strikeouts. Garrett Crochet is probably overperformed, but his underlying numbers, he's pitching really well. Crochet
yes.
is two of the best closers in the league, numbers wise, Duran and Munoz, and what they offer stuff wise. These 5 pitches. Okay, I don't love Charlie Morton. Singer should probably be in there over Charlie Morton. But overall, I wish you could add a pitcher. I wish you could turn Singer or Martin into a better pitcher to really be. I mean, if it was Crochet, Peralta, Garrett, Cease, and then you were to add like a Garrett Cole to that, and then have the two top closers, that's pretty scary. And then he's got to round out the lineup a little bit, but I don't know what keepers he has to give up to kind of make a Garrett Cole deal. So here's what I wanted to see from Chris is I see he's got some second base depth. He's got Marcus Simeon, but he also has McMahon, who's second base eligible. And he's also got Bryce Terang, who's second base eligible, and Luis Garcia and Tyler Freeman and Dylan Moore, who are all second base, and then a bunch of shortstops too. So he's got like a bunch of middle infielders that he needs to kind of figure out what he's going to do with them. So the trade that I have for Chris is I think that he should take Marcus Simeon and send him with George Springer. He's given up on George Springer over to Tyler. And so he's turning a second baseman and a bench outfielder, Springer and Simeon. And he's turning that into Adolis Garcia and Will Benson.
Interesting. Okay.
So
Interesting.
Tyler, like I said, he's got all these outfielders. I wonder, but Tyler's second baseman right now is Gleyber Torres, who is playing like dog shit. And he doesn't have a better second base option. So he gets to bench Gleyber Torres or put him in utility. So he gets a second base upgrade from Torres to Simeon. And it'll cost him Adolis Garcia, who is probably a bad on base percentage guy this year. He's probably had a really down year this year. He needs to put up numbers like he put up last year. But
Steals are just gone.
steals are kind of gone. He's never been like a top steal. I guess he had like 30 last year. He did have. Oh, he had 9 last year. He had 25
Just like
steals.
O'Neal Cruz only has 5 steals this year.
Yeah,
The freak
yeah,
of
the steals are
nature.
down. So, but then he's getting Adolis Garcia and he's getting a $1 Will Benson, who's got some okay numbers, not really great, but a $1 A. His 8 homers, 9 steals, so a little bit of power speed, kind of just like a Ramon Laureano 15-15 kind of guy.
I think I read something that he is
$1
the
A.
most. What's that thing called when you either strike out, walk, or hit a home run? Like
Three
the
true outcome.
yeah. I think if I'm not mistaken, he has the highest percentage of those 3 outcomes in baseball.
Who, Benson or
Yes,
Adolis? Yeah.
Benson. Yeah.
So, it's just turning different positions to different positions. Maybe both sides are unhappy with that. Maybe Tyler wants to hang on to Adolis Garcia, he traded for him for a reason, believes in the upside. And maybe Chris looks at it and is like, "Oh, I don't want Adolis Garcia. He's worse than Simeon, so it's not an upgrade for me." So I just thought positionally something like that would make sense. Tyler gets a second baseman, Chris gets outfield help, and Chris has the middle infielders to supplement around that.
Okay. I also have a trade between Chris and Tyler, believe it or not.
Oh, let's
Um,
let's throw them all together. Make a
yeah.
one big one.
It's interesting because again, these two teams are literally competing against each other.
Yeah.
So they're again what we talked about earlier in that show about the trade fear. I don't want to get beat in a trade. I'm going against Mike. So it is tough. So I looked at both their strengths and weaknesses, and it's not huge. Okay, actually, it is kind of huge if you look at the names, but I think it really actually helps both teams in what they're lacking. Chris is really lacking in home runs and RBIs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I got just this 1-for-1 trade where Tyler sends Peter Alonso for Peralta. I think it makes Tyler's one of the most dangerous rotations in baseball. He can take the hit from losing Alonso with his lineup, with all the outfielders, the home runs, the RBIs. And I think Chris gets the power and the bat that he needs badly. Both of them are kind of having downish years. As we mentioned, Peralta's not been great. Alonso's not on pace for 40 or 50 bombs. And I think it just makes sense, just that 1-for-1.
I like the idea, but this trade needs more teams because Tyler doesn't have a first baseman to replace Alonso.
I don't know about that. See, here's my thing. If you look at where Tyler's at roto and hitting, his offense is fine. I mean, if we look at where he's at hitting wise,
it's still worse than Bryce and mine though, right? By roto standings.
Oh yeah, roto standings. It's not, the home runs and the RBIs are his 2 best. The runs are low, the stolen bases are low, the OBP's
Whoa,
awful.
he's got 26 and a half roto points in hitting. He's the 4th worst offense in the league.
No, I know that's what I'm saying. I'm saying he can stand the home runs and the RBI hit. He's got all the outfielders. My thing with this is I'm not looking at it from like a pure roto, like they're going to get in it perspective. They're competing against each other. I'm looking at it where they can help each other.
Head to head.
I'm going head to head here. I think Chris, he's got the pitching. If you look at his pitching in roto, his Ks are second best. His WHIP is second best. I think it makes sense. It's a 1-for-1 Alonso Peralta.
I like
either of them. Maybe your
I like
keepers
the
next
idea,
year.
but then Chris has Morton and Singer in his rotation. So his rotation takes a kind of a hit there.
I don't know, dude. I think Chris becomes you like his rotation a lot less than I did.
Yeah. So
I think if you added I don't know, man. I think his rotation I think is fine, but we'll see.
I
I don't
just
love the trade. It's tough because again, like we talked about earlier in the show, I think a lot of
it's an
these teams.
idea. I mean, it's certainly an idea. Does I mean, can we just include like a Lorenzen and Yandy Diaz, and then
Yeah, you
just or
could.
something like I mean, or something. I mean, Yandy Diaz probably isn't better than what Tyler has mentioned. Connor Joe, they're both need a first baseman,
But I mean,
But
look how many guys. I mean, he desperately needs home runs. I mean, he literally has two guys on his team with double digits, and
hmm,
then he desperately needs
he
pop.
does, he does, he
I mean,
does.
that's why again, I think he goes. I have another trade here where Dex. Why not traded Giancarlo Stanton to Chris?
Hmm.
17 bombs, right? Why not? Why not try to go after a Luis Robert?
Yeah. Did you already say that one? The what's your Dex Chris trade?
Yes, Dexter sent Stanton and Robert to Chris for
Okay.
Singer and Alvarado. And
Okay.
again, he needs pop. Stanton and Robert.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. I like the idea. I just don't know if it works out for what the teams
Well,
have
but
to.
we're also at this part of the teams where you're gonna if you're giving up something, you're sacrificing something. I
Yeah,
mean, it's not
yeah.
you or
Well, and
Chad where
I think that's the whole reason what we talked about at the start of the pod, which is
yeah.
why
You and
Chad.
Chad, you can sacrifice something and still be like, I feel better about my team. If we're at that part of the teams where if you're giving up something, you have to sacrifice something. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to.
Yeah. All right. Next on our list, coming in at number 7 is Jay's team. I don't know if we give Jay too much respect, not enough respect, too much disrespect, not enough disrespect. I don't know, but Jay's team was the single hardest team for me to find a deal for because I don't see hardly any keepers here. So he can't even shop with the tanking teams because he can't get anybody like Austin Riley because he doesn't have anything to give up. And then it's like he's just shuffling pieces around. And his offense is fine. His pitching is fine. He doesn't have a glut of anything. He doesn't have a bunch of pitching depth. He doesn't have a lot of hitting depth. He's just kind of set in what he has. So it's almost like you have to look at it from like a categorical standpoint or like a positional standpoint. And I don't really know how to address that. So tell me what you drew up for Chad or for Jay, I mean.
He was also one of the hardest ones for me to drop of because I don't like his rotation enough. I think there's a bunch of guys, a couple guys overperforming. I don't like his lineup enough. I think he's going to hang in there. He's going to be in the wild card race and stuff, but it's really, really tough to make a trade for him because you're right. There's not many pieces that you could really trade that are keepers where you could get something back along those lines. Like I said, the only one I had was the Helsley for Real Muto one. And I know you, like I said, you're not a huge fan of it. It gives him another closer. Neris has been awful. That job's probably gone. He's only got McGill, who also loses his job soon to Devin Williams. That
Yeah,
leaves Jay with
that's true.
zero closers. So I feel like
Yeah,
him making a
be
move for
tough.
Helsley makes the most sense. Now, whether that is a
I mean,
I mean,
considering he
again,
has Langoliers, it would make sense for him to trade Real Muto for a
yeah.
closer. I mean, yeah, sure. I just don't think it really makes sense for the return there. So I mean, yeah, maybe Chad can give him one of his closers. Maybe Phil can give up one of his closers. He already tried that. I think maybe he already got burned by the Hector
I mean,
Neris.
that's what I'm saying. Do you give up Real Muto for Doval? Doval's been bad, but I mean, do you get a closer?
No, no,
I mean, he needs a
I don't
closer.
value, I don't value him. David Fry is putting up Real Muto numbers.
No, I'm
Um,
saying from Jay's perspective, do you get Doval for Real Muto? Doval's
uh,
been bad, but
yeah, not.
he's gonna have no closer
Maybe.
and two. He's gonna have
Maybe that type of trade, but it has to be the exact right buyer, and
yeah.
that buyer will not be me.
My
Uh,
worry is Jay's got no closers in 2 weeks.
yeah, could be a problem. I actually, ironically, I did. The only thing I think of was the trade with me that Jay and I kind of was in the chat the other day, which is Rafael Devers, Jared Jones, and Andy Pajes. So he's getting his guy Jared Jones, his Pirate pitcher. He's getting Rafael Devers, best player in the deal, and he's giving up Altuve, Pablo Lopez, and then either one of Rosarena or Castellanos. I asked him which one he preferred. He said probably Castellanos to move, but he's not anxious to move either one of them. So the reason why I say that is because Altuve would then he has Joey Ortiz, who's has okay numbers. And he didn't start the year, I think, on the roster, so he only got 186 at bats, but 6 homers, 4 steals, solid OBP at 385, okay counting stats, 27-27 in a abbreviated stat line. So Ortiz goes to second. And then he takes Arenado, puts him at utility. Devers becomes his third baseman, and then he needs to take like Jake Myers or Pajes in the deal. He takes the outfield spot instead of Castellanos. And then he's upgrading from Pablo Lopez, who got lit up again tonight, and his 5.6 ERA for Pablo Lopez, turning him into Jared Jones. And that's what he gets for giving up Altuve and Castellanos to upgrade from Pablo Lopez to Jared Jones. And he said the deal makes sense on paper, but he doesn't make sense for his team. So I tried modifying it a little bit, but haven't heard back from him. So that's about all I got for Jay.
Well, it's tough too because I mean we're talking. I mean, look at these on base. I mean, the on base percentage question got brought up the other day in the chat. I have one dude on my team under 330 on base percentage.
Hmm.
Jay's got Castellanos 275, Arozarena 291,
Yeah,
Langoliers
five under that
261,
mark.
Mountcastle 314. I mean, some really low ones. That's tough.
Yeah, and I mean he's been active on the waiver wire, like we said last pod, but it's just like I can see why, because there's nothing of note here. I mean, maybe James Wood comes up at some point and turns the season around. He really needs it, but he doesn't even have any depth. So it's just I don't know what he
Helen
does.
comes back soon, which helps.
Yeah.
I think he's waiting for him to come back, but
And I guess JP Crawford could also go into his lineup, his utility as well. He's okay, but not really what you want either.
yeah.
So yeah, he needs Gallon to come back and Romano. I guess he has a Romano. Maybe he needs him to be his closer too. I guess we need to see him down
If
there.
he
So
still has a job, he was awful prior, but
yeah, so that's kind of I don't really love where Jay's at. I think he's kind of in purgatory, but I give him the benefit of the doubt because he's done it before, and we've sat here and said how much we don't like his team, and then he just emerges and then just wins head to head every year.
I think
So
both of us preseason had him low, and he's right here in the thick of a playoff race
right
again.
in the
So
thick of it, and all of his players are underperforming too, like we said last podcast, where it's like,
yeah,
yeah, all these guys could turn it on. Castellanos can turn it on, Rosarena can turn it on, Correa can turn it on. These are,
Arenado.
can turn on. All these guys are underperforming what their career norms are. We would expect them to kind of turn it around a little bit. So if all those guys do get back to the career norms, then it makes Jay's team even better than what it is. And right now, it's a playoff team. So
Yes.
and so he's dangerous. So you got to keep a close eye on him. But yeah, I don't really love the spot he's in right now. Next, coming at sixth, we have Tyler's team. I think we've kind of said most of what we think Tyler's trades are.
Yeah.
We've given a few going a couple different directions for Tyler. Let me see if I wrote any more that I. Nope, I have the trade with Dana, and then I have the trade with Chris, the Adelise Garcia trade. But that's those are the two that I have for Tyler. Decent squad up and down. He made the move of getting rid of Otani, putting his chips in the middle of the table, but I think his team is still just not where it needs to be to make that kind of move.
Yeah, and again, he's a little bit lower than Chris and Jay in the roto standings, so it kind of says what that says. I actually think his lineup is pretty solid. Like I said,
I think so, yeah.
that's why I think he could give up Alonso if he wanted to. Does he need to? No. Again, I think Tyler's in a really tough spot where there isn't just a full on move to make without sacrificing something.
Mhm.
There's just not. So I think that makes it tough. But I mean, again, Gore, Lorenzen, Severino, a lot of those guys would be in most people's lineups. Hicks has been amazing for him. So the one thing you could maybe point at is the pitching depth. He's still waiting on Kershaw to come back this year.
Yeah.
Rasmussen,
Mhm.
I don't know why he's got Rasmussen. He's a guy coming in September and he's a C. But so he's got an abundance of pitching, but like you said, a lot of people do. So is he gonna get the value he wants back from it? I
Yeah.
like his lineup, so I would say I would trade pitching maybe for an upgrade on pitching or another bat because his lineup roto wise has not produced, but I do like the lineup.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, road lineup's solid. The pitching staff's solid. So it's weird to see him still down in purgatory. Maybe just got off to a really slow start because in top to bottom, it's been pretty solid. And then he's getting like massive production, like way over what we expect out of Profar, way over what we expect out of Helio Ramos, and some of these guys. And
But
so,
under what we'd expect from Rodriguez,
yeah,
Garcia,
yeah.
Bregman.
So I don't know if law of averages is going to work both ways, and this team's just going to be mid or what. But it has some interesting pieces there. He can make a splash. This is a team that could win a championship in head to head. It'd be hard pressed to work his way all the way back in Roto, but stranger things have happened. It could get hot if Julio and everybody turns it around and everybody gets hot. It could make some moves.
The more I'm looking at this team, the more I actually might like. I think I had Jay 6, Tyler 7. The more
Mhm.
I might actually like Tyler's team more than Jay's.
I had Tyler 5. I had Tyler ahead of the next first team we're going to talk
Yeah,
about.
I'm gonna flip mine a little bit. I'm gonna put Tyler 6 and J7 because
So
I like
that would move Tyler ahead of this next team, which is
yes,
Jordan's team. What were you
which
gonna
is
say?
it, which is interesting because Jordan's team has been really. We talked about this on the last pod. Head to head wise is killing it. Roto wise is doing a really damn good job, but
Yeah.
you think it's overperforming.
Yeah, I think it's overperforming a little bit. I mean, guys like Vlad is underperforming. But I just look at some of these names and just from Merrill, Donovan, Bader, Burleson, Juan,
It's a tough
Varsho.
stretch.
That's
Yeah.
a real, that's six players right there. Wait, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven players right there that like are not making a significant fantasy. And even Miranda, from Miranda down, Miranda, Merrill, Donovan, Bader, Burleson, Quan, Varsho, seven players right there that are just not making a positive fantasy impact on his team. Now, ever since I poked fun at Jackson Verrill not being a fantasy player, more of a real life player, he's actually turned it on. He's got 3 home runs and now 9 steals total on the year. His last 30 days, he's got 11 runs, 4 homers, 12 RBIs, 2 steals, and a 270 on base. But he's playing better. He got hot ever since I kind of poked him a little bit. But yeah, just like it feels like you're not a serious team if that's your outfield. And he's trying to trade some of this pitching, but I don't even think he can trade pitching. I mean, he said, "Oh, who needs pitching?" And he's trying to trade in some of the offers he sent me. He's trying to trade some pitching away for hitting, but and trying to address the outfield issue that he has. But I don't think he's got pitching depth. I mean, he's banking on Blake Snell to, I guess, come back at some point. When's Blake Snell coming back? Scheduled to throw a bullpen, so he's not even close to coming back to the rotation. And so he's gonna, I guess, put Kirby Yates back in the rotation. But it's good on paper now that Max Scherzer is back. It's a pretty solid rotation. Pitching's not the problem, but I also don't think he can just give up pitching either. He doesn't have the depth for it. So I think he's another guy that's kind of stuck. But I have some interesting ways to get him unstuck a little bit. What do you make of this team?
I actually I like his team more than you do. Like I said, I have him. Where do I got him in my rankings? I got him fifth in my rankings.
Item sixth. You have him fifth.
Yeah. I think he's in cruise mode right now, where again he doesn't really have anything to give up. There's a few teams that are like this, and I think that's a little bit as to why some trades haven't happened. Um, he's pretty secure in making the head-to-head playoffs outside of like a huge, we've talked about this pre-show, those top three teams would need a huge disaster to happen to not make the head-to-head playoffs. I think Mike Trout being on this team makes a big difference. And I think him coming back in August, right
Get
when
what
it
you pay
matters,
for.
right when it matters most, right when the head-to-head playoffs are going to get started, you throw a Trout on this team, I think it does make a big difference, because when you look at a core of Adley, Vlad, Jazz, and then Trout, yeah, Otani, that's going to get by. It's not great, but that's the stars and scrubs approach that's going to get by. And I actually like Jordan's rotation. I think he's got more than needed, more than most. And no, it's not superstar. Oh my God! But if Scherzer comes back and does well, Scherzer, Kirby, Ryan, Hook, Holmes, I like Jordan's team. I think it's good.
It is good. I mean, it's top in the ring. It's in the top half. It's not. I have him number fifth or sixth or
If
whatever.
Trout comes back, is his offense really? I mean, you throw those five dudes in the
You
lineup.
say that statement if Trout comes back. Did you hear the news?
What's the news?
Mike Trout said Tuesday that his recovery from discus surgery has gone slower than expected.
Uh-oh.
He's without an official timetable for return.
I did not see that news.
That's what you get from for Mike Trout. It is what it is. Unfortunately, I hate seeing it. I love Mike Trout. I want him to be great. It just is what it is, and it's hurting him. Yeah, and yeah, I know he's banking on Kerry Carpenter coming back and being an asset too. And as a part of that deal, he felt disrespected, like we didn't mention Kerry Carpenter in that trade he made. And I guess it would help, but Kerry Carpenter also isn't that good either. So here's what I said: who would have time to wait on Mike Trout, or maybe a guy who's maybe has a little bit of a lead who would want to wait on Mike Trout? And I think that Chad would wait on Mike Trout. Let's say Chad can turn some of these other assets. Let's say he makes one of the other trades that we've mentioned tonight for Chad. All right, he makes any one of these other deals. And then he goes to Jordan. He's like, "Hey, I'll take Mike Trout off your hands, and instead I will give you Devin Williams and Vinny Pasquantino." Now, Vinny Pasquantino would be a first baseman, so he would just slot into his utility. So Varsho goes to his outfield, and Pasquantino would go to his other utility next to Otani. So he wouldn't have a lot of roster flexibility there, but he'd add some pop. Varsho would go in, and like Harrison Bader or Donovan would go out or whatever. And then looking at his closers, he's got Clay Holmes and he's got Yates on his bench. So he must be losing faith in Kirby Yates a little bit, even though he's got great numbers. Or I don't know why he's got Yates on his bench. Maybe he just wanted to get the starts in there, but maybe he wanted a second closer. Maybe he doesn't really love Yates there. Doesn't think he's going to keep the rest of the season. He's going to go Devin Williams and Pasquantino for Mike Trout for the 1 month of Mike Trout. What do you think of that?
Too much.
Too much for who?
That'd be too much for 1 month of Mike Trout.
For 1 month, Mike Trout. Yeah, you'd have to be like it'd have to be like a post All-Star break where you're getting like a month and
I
a
mean,
half.
Pasquanito, I think, is on pace for like 100 ribbies. I mean, he's been doing damn good. Yeah.
Yeah, Chad has too many first basemen. It's kind of thing. So I mean, he's kind of got he's got
Right.
uh I know he's got Pasquantino. He has
I do agree that
Bryce
Jordan, I mean,
Harper,
could
and he's
really,
got Reese Hoskins. So he's got all these first basemen. So he's kind of got a little flexibility there, or
right.
needs to create some flexibility. That's why I thought it kind of made a little bit of sense. Plus, Pasquantino, yeah, 46 RBIs, only 7 homers and 244 at bats. But yeah, you can't replace those RBIs. Ooh, 3-run homer, Teoscar Hernandez. How about that?
Let me ask you this: Sanchez from Philly's done a decent job. Would you give up, knowing that Jordan has this abundance of pitching, or even Scherzer? I mean, Scherzer's something to think about. Would you give up Sanchez to Dexter if you got
I thought about that.
if you got back like I keep going back to the Stanton Robert thing, but so many people need outfielders. I think those are the two names that make the most sense. Do you give up a Sanchez to get Robert back?
I don't think that he has the pitching depth for that. I mean, yeah, you probably would at that point, but like what? So I guess Yates then goes to back in his lineup and he's
Yeah.
fine. So I guess yeah, that makes some sense. He's a little bit thin after that.
He
He's a,
doesn't have many pitchers on in his bench, so that makes it tough.
yeah,
But
and so I guess you and then maybe once Blake Snell comes back, it makes more sense. But Blake Snell was unstartable. It's 9.5 ERA and
super small sample size, but yeah, 23. Yeah, it's
but
been
that's just
rough.
who Blake Snell is. He's a
Yeah.
roller. You're not counting on Alex Cobb. You're not counting on Edward
I
Cabrera.
think he's one of the toughest teams to make a trade for, no doubt about it. I think he's a Tigers fan, so he won't do it. But Kerry Carpenter's had a very good stat line in the limited amount of time he's had. $5 A player. But I don't think he gives him up. He's a Tigers fan.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, if 145 bats, if you multiply all those stats by
Four.
4, yeah, then that's an all-star.
Yeah.
So I guess that's something. And maybe getting him back will certainly help the lineup a little bit. So
But honestly, I think
oh,
with the core he's got, I agree with you 100%. That Merrill, when you look at that lineup, that Miranda all the way to Burleson or Quan kind of stretch really makes you go, ugh. Like that's
yeah.
probably one of the worst stretches in the league in terms of lineup. But again, Rushman, Guerrero, Chisholm, Otani, it's carrying him so far.
This would probably be a good trade team for Phil. I mean, would you trade like that Christopher Sanchez and Edward Cabrera and Jorge Polanco or something? I don't know. And then get back like just one of Phil's okay pitchers and then two of his okay outfielders like that Brandon Marsh and
Yeah.
all that. Just in something that just kind of shuffling some smaller pieces around. So, if you're talking Jock Peterson and
Yeah.
Marsh and then a
Well,
guy
Jordan's also got one of the worst benches in the league because I mean, I know some people have some small benches, but DeLuca, Falefa, Kerstad, Pilar, these are guys that really aren't even owned in many leagues. So,
wow. Yeah, so I mean I could see something small like that where it's like Kyle Gibson, then Jock Peterson and Brandon Marsh or something like that, and then for Christopher Sanchez and maybes and Edward Cabrera or whatever else. Like I could see something smaller like that as
yeah.
well. All right, next coming in at I think that's all we have for Jordan, right? Yeah, it was kind
Yeah.
of hard to make do this for him. Next, coming in at number 4, we have consent. He's number 4 on both of our lists. So this is the top tier in the fringe juggernauts tier, and that's gonna be Bryce. He's not quite
How
there.
about that?
But his team is, you can't argue. I mean, a number 1 team in head-to-head, his offense is elite. He's got the best offense in the league. The pitching staff lacks luster a little bit. I think there's some holes in the pitching staff that need to be addressed. Closer maybe is starting to get figured out with Fairbanks and Diaz getting the save this week. Maybe that's going to kind of come around. So he's an interesting team. He maybe has some moves to make. Maybe he can turn Shane Baz and Max Meyer and maybe a $1 Lance Lynn or a $4 Soler or a $2 Grissom or $7 Cassis and turning some of those guys into pieces that'll help them this year into pitching. I think there's some interesting moves to be made here.
There
They
is.
make some splash moves to address the pitching. So I think he needs like a high end pitcher though. I don't think he needs like Lorenzen or uh any of Chris's fringe pitchers or anything like that. I think he needs like an ace here because if he can get an ace, like I said, like a Garrett Cole here, and he goes Garrett Cole, Skubal, Gilbert, Lodolo, Ober or whatever it is. That's a pretty solid rotation there with two what's supposed to be pretty good closers in Fairbanks and Diaz. You might have a decent pitching staff to counter this thing. So I think he needs to kind of go all in for like a Garrett Cole if he can fit him in the budget, or Wheeler or whoever else from some maybe even a Yamamoto or someone from that. And there's one trade before I get to mine. Is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I'm on the same wavelength there.
All right, so I have two Bryce trades. The first one I already mentioned. It was the Peter trade where he gives up CJ Abrams and Tristan Casas, gets back Garrett Cole, Jesus Luzardo, and Jonah Heim. The second one, I have a trade between old friends Bryce and Chad. So Bryce would get Max Fried and Corbin Carroll. So he takes the flyer on Corbin Carroll, gets Max Fried, and he gives up Fernando Tatis and Chris Bassett. So Bryce gets Fried and Carroll. He's hoping that Corbin Carroll can kind of be 80% of what Tatis is and kind of rebound a little bit. He's kind of buying low a little bit, and he's getting a great pitcher in Max Fried, who's some great numbers. And Bryce gets the all-star stud in Fernando Tatis, and he also gets Chris Bassett, who has a higher floor, a better health track record to supplement his rotation a little bit instead of taking some of the injury risks that he has. What do you think?
I don't hate it, but again, this is where we get to that part where these are two teams competing against each other. There's not a whole lot of weaknesses, and I honestly look at it very close to a wash. I think it's fair, but I don't really think
Both
it.
teams are addressing a need. Both teams getting better, and
But
both
but
teams
here's
have a
but
better chance of passing me and I guess passing me and you and Roto.
now let me ask you this though: does Chad or Bryce really have like a big need? I mean,
Uh,
they're the
well,
top
yeah,
two teams in
Bryce
Roto.
needs top line pitching, I think, and Chad needs offense. So Chad is upgrading
Now
offense.
when we say the word need, let's not forget that Chad is still a top. What is he, fourth or fifth in Roto hitting?
Yeah,
Bryce is fifth in pitching for Roto. So it's their it's their weakest part of their team, but it's not a need.
you don't play for third base, Eric. You play for first.
No, but that's what I'm saying. You're sacrificing stuff to get stuff.
Yeah, that's
You know
tough.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's that when you're talking about two top. I don't. I think it's fair. I do. I just look at it as more of like a yeah. Let's trade players to trade players.
Yeah.
And that's what's tough with it. So I don't know.
Who would want to trade players? Trade players. That's what this league's all about.
Right. I got an interesting one. Bryce and
Yeah.
Phil. Okay. You wanted the top line starter, which I don't disagree with, and I do think Bryce has a decent amount of pitching there. Um, Maybe this one makes sense. We'll see. Bryce sends Phil, Taylor Ward, and Meyer, and then he gets back two of these three guys: Eflin, Eovaldi, or Pavetta.
Well, you mean Dex? I think I said Phil.
Is it Dex has those guys? Is it
Yeah.
Dex that has Eovaldi? Okay, sorry, Dex. Bryce sends Ward and Meyer. Dex would send two of the three back. Pick him, doesn't matter. Eflin, Eovaldi, or Pavetta. It gives Bryce two pitchers back. He doesn't need the hitting very much. He gets rid of Ward. That's his one starter he
I
gives up.
think.
He gives
Okay. Yeah.
he gives
Uh,
up the bench piece in Meyer, and then he stocks up on Eflin and Eovaldi.
are Eflin, Eovaldi, and Pavetta upgrades to what he has?
I think they would be an upgrade over Ober. Yes, Ober's been awful this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Ober.
But my thing is,
Yeah.
we look at his bench though. MacArthur not good. Adam is a reliever. Garcia is hurt. Lively is he a reliever starter? I can't. I mean, he's a starter. He's been fine,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I mean, like I said, does he need more of a top line guy? Probably. But to give up Ward, who's again you could replace, your offense is fine. To get two quality pitchers, I don't hate it.
Yeah.
Again, we're talking about teams that are already the best teams in the league.
Yeah.
You
I
know
mean,
what I mean?
I think it probably makes his team better. Yeah, I think so. So, but I mean, Ward's been one of his best producers ever since the trade. But Yeah, he's hit a lot of home runs. He's kind of starting to cool back off again. I think he's kind of a streaky hitter, but I think it would make some sense. I think if you're giving up Ward, ask for Winker back because then
Yep.
you're going lateral production. You're giving up the A, getting the C back, and then I think
Sure.
that
Totally.
makes a lot more sense then.
Because Bryce's lineup, I mean, we talk about how thin outfields are. He's probably got one of the best. I mean, he does have one of the best outfields. He's got Duran, Soto, Tatis, Ward, and O'Neill. That's probably one of the best outfield
It is.
lineups out there. So honestly, Bryce, without being, it's not a surprise. Bryce has one of the best lineups for sure. The only place where he could really get help, where he's not getting many at bats there, and it's actually kind of hurting him, is catcher.
Yeah, that's
I
why
mean,
I had him getting Jonah Heim in that trade with Peter.
right. I can't remember again what Jay needed, but like again, does Real Muto come to Bryce for did Jay need pitching? Does Bryce trade a Lance Lynn
Yeah,
for Real Muto?
I would take anything I get for Real Muto at this point. You're getting the same production out of Langoliers that you are Real Muto.
Yeah. But
All right.
Danny Jansen with 140 at bats, I mean, it's almost unstartable, right? I mean, you got to get more
Yeah.
than that.
Yeah, I think I've gone over every single one of my trades with all of
Same.
the three teams that are left. We actually have a tie in our aggregate standings. We have a tie for first place, these three. So it's Chad, Eric, and Kyle. And I think each team brings a little bit something different. I think that you have the best team right now. I talked about that earlier. I think that your team on paper is the most well-rounded. You have everything you need. Your pitching staff is solid. Your hitting is solid. You don't really have any gaps in the lineup. There's nothing you need right now. There's nothing you need to address. Anything else that's just depth at this point or upgrades or are on the fringes. But I also don't think that you have a lot of assets to trade. You made your big splash moves and your team is what it is. So I had you first in my power rankings. Second, I had myself. I think that my team is incomplete. I think that my team is solid. I'm second in head to head. I'm second in roto. I'm not dying to make a move right now. But I think that if I don't make a move, some of the other teams might pass me if I miss these opportunities. But I also think that I have the best assets to make the biggest splash. I think if I need to go get Luis Robert, if I need to go get Austin Riley and Zach Wheeler, I think I have the assets to make those trades happen if I really needed to. I don't know if that can be said about everybody. And then Chad has kind of the best mix of both. His team is very solid right now. It's a number one roto team. And he also has assets to maybe he can sneak in and use those assets to get like Luis Robert and somebody else like around the edges and maybe like another infielder he can trade one or two small assets to go get Paul DeYoung or something here, or maybe go get some Lindor, maybe gets Luis Robert, here and there, and he has the potential to make those splashes. Whether he does, we'll see. But I think all three of those teams are kind of in a tier of their own as kind of our three kind of front runners right now.
Agreed. 100%. Yep. That's the next tier. That is, I think I think Jordan's not going to like the conversation because he is there in the roto conversation. But yes, those are for sure. I would say the top three teams.
But yeah,
Bryce
but
too.
you
Bryce
also
is right there
haven't
too. So
100% reaped the benefits of acquiring two
true.
top 30 players in Schwarber and
Yep.
Castillo and then Ian Happ. So it's like you made that move, and that's why
I think
even
I've gained six
tied right
roto
now,
points
I
in the
expect
last
your
week.
team to get significantly better over the next 2 months, whereas he has not made that move to make his team better yet. So that's why it's got to be you got to be put ahead of him.
Oh sure.
Oh, okay. Here we are. I don't know how many hours we are in, but always is a lot longer than expected. That concludes our power rankings.
Do we want to individually do ours so we know?
Yeah, go ahead. You can say yours first.
All right, Peter 14, Phil 13, Dex 12, Justin 11, Krim 10, Chris 9, Dana 6 or 8th, Jay 7, Tyler 6, Jordan 5, Bryce 4, myself 3, Kyle 2, and then Chad 1.
I had the bottom four, which are pretty interchangeable. Dex, Justin, Phil, and Peter going from the bottom up. And then starting number 10, Dana 10, then Krim, Chris at 8, Jay, Jordan at 6, Tyler at 5, Bryce at 4, Chad at 3, myself at 2, and Eric at 1. What a coincidence. The two podcast hosts at 1 and 2. Who would have thought? No bias in the rankings at all. Is there any other shout outs you want to throw out before we get out of here?
Here's who holds the cards for the next month. Okay. Obviously, Dexter and Peter, we talked about a lot with the Garrett Cole, the Zach Wheeler, maybe judges out there, Dexter with Robert, with Stanton, with maybe Yamamoto. You yourself have the keys to do whatever you want to do.
I like to
I'm
think
I'm
that.
I'm curious as to where you truly, it sounds like from what we've talked about on the show, you really, really, as you should, but you really, really value your injured pitchers highly. I think if you wanted to, you're going into next year. I know we're looking at next year. Ragans and Sale have been keeper worthy, right? So even if you said, "Hey, I'm keeping Ragans and Sale next year," those are two in my rotation. If you even traded two out of your four injured pitchers, you're still keeping two out of those four, right? Whether the mixture of DeGrom, McClanahan, Ray, or Woodruff. I would not wait much longer if I'm you to trade two of those for one of those hauls. Whether
It's not
that's
because even though I do value these guys very highly, I don't need all of them.
exactly, and that's what I'm saying. At what point, and again, is it sooner than later? Do you trade Degrom and McClanahan for Wheeler? Do you trade
Mhm.
Degrom and McClanahan for Robert and Stant? I mean, I don't like I said, I don't really know exactly where they're valued for you, but you have the keys to make that move. It's just a
Right.
matter. I mean, again, you have Cutter Crawford, who right now is a keeper next year. You have Woo, who very small sample size, who
Mhm.
right now is a keeper next year. So you have the keys to make that splash.
Yep.
It's just a matter of when you do it and who it's with. Because
Yeah.
again, in a month from now, you don't really like Krim's team. A month from now, maybe Freddie Freeman and again Machado and Alec Baum are guys that are on the market. Aaron Nola are guys
Yeah.
that are on the market. So
Yeah, Krim can kind of hold the cards too because he has a lot of interesting pieces.
yep.
And if you want to trade Bohm and Paredes, even though those guys, Paredes can be kept, he could get increase that return a little bit. And I think it's time to stop thinking black and white and then start trying to think outside the box of some of these deals here and get something done. I don't know what my urgency is. I'm kind of just sitting back, letting it come to me. But I think if I keep doing that, teams like you are gonna nip at my heels and catch me here.
Yeah, since we've had that conversation in the last 30 seconds, I've jumped two more roto points and I've now gone eight roto points in the last week. So I'm up to 95, man. I'm feeling good.
Oh, yeah, you're creeping up there. Maybe I need to get a little bit more urgent. Oh, Peter hit my line. Peter has an offer in his inbox, so we'll see how it all goes. He hasn't accepted nor rejected. He said he's thinking about it.
And that's the thing too, is it takes two to tango. And
Yeah.
I've had conversations with Peter. And again, I am not saying that he's not valuing these people enough, but one of the conversations was me trading Ellie, and he's like, "You would need another piece with Wheeler," and I'm like, "Well, fuck yeah, I need another piece."
Yeah.
So like, I think he's also valuing his guys really high.
But
But
that's what
again,
you should do. You need
you
to
should,
maximize. You might as well say, well, okay, I'm going to see what I can get
but
first.
but you also can't keep them all.
Yeah.
And that's why I think you got to jump on Riley. You got to jump on these. You got like if I'm you, I would consider maybe trading three of those pitchers. Hey, Peter, pick three pitchers you want. Give me Riley and Cole.
I'm not doing that.
It'd make you the best team without question.
That is not my offer. Yeah, but I don't need when I'm the second place team, I'm fine taking second place this year and then winning first place the next 2 years because I think that's the position that it puts me in.
Oh man, I
And
don't know.
so I'm not mortgaging the entire future for this year. So if that's what you're hoping for, you can make trades elsewhere. There's not a deal that I'm probably packaging McClanahan and Woodruff in. I can tell you that right now. But I have some offers for Crawford and Woodruff or McClanahan and Woo and or some of those together or whatever it may be. So, but I'm not mortgaging the entire future. 'Cause I think that there's no better asset in the league than I feel like some of those pitchers, and that's just my opinion. So if you prefer Caminero and Pete Crow Armstrong and DL Hall, if you want three of those maybes that haven't proven anything, that's fine. But you're getting sure things. I feel like in McClanahan. McClanahan can come back and be bad, and he's still gonna be worth $4, more than $4. So I think the what you're getting there, it's McClanahan doesn't have to be Cy Young to him to be worth that contract. Same for Woodruff, same for all these guys. They're going to be worth what they are, and I'm
Grom
fine
hasn't pitched
rolling the
100
next
innings
year
in
with
4 years.
I'm fine rolling into next year with him. I would have no issue with it at all. All right, we got to wrap there and get out of here. So let's see here. Where am I about? Oh, there we go. For Eric, I'm Kyle. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully you stuck around through the whole thing and
Woo!
till next time.